Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. So as you see in thumbnail, we are gonna see, what if Naruto was Pervy's son of God in Naruto x Kurenai x Izanami? This is movie 1, and if you want more then please leave a like, share and subscribe. Let's get in the video. The autumn's night was filled with cries of pain and suffering. Smell of death strong in the air and sounds of ruin ruled the night. Tonight was the most devastating day for Konoha, for it had come under the attack of the most powerful and dangerous of tailed beasts, Kyuubi, or nine-tailed fox, unleashed upon the village from his confinement by a malicious person that sought to bring ruin to this village. Nine Tails had caused unprecedented amount of damage to the village, leveling entire swaths of it by mere roaring. Nearly all of Konoha's shinobi rose up and answered the call of duty, striking at the beast with all their might and power, yet it all seemed to do nothing but irritate the beast even more, and the angrier he grew, more and more of loyal sons and daughters of Konoha fell to him, the tally already reaching past hundreds, and now several thousands of shinobi had served their lives to this beast of calamity. And all this time, the beast was under the control of the man that had unsealed him. The one who attacked Kushina Uzumaki just as she gave birth to her triplets, and was trying to kill Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage and husband to Kushina. The two seemed evenly matched for some time, yet victory ultimately was claimed by Minato, who managed to sever the connection between Kyuubi and this man, who claimed to be Madara Uchiha himself, once it was done. However, Fox regained his freedom at last, and it was set to not be imprisoned again by anyone.
And with greater than before rage and power, it began to destroy Konoha, and in mere minutes it achieved more than he had done under the control of Madara. Shinobi were already losing hope and fighting out simple stubbornness to surrender, when Minato had managed to intervene and teleport the beast away, saving his village and his people. But merely relocating Nine Tails was not enough, because now there was an even more dangerous task ahead of him: resealing that creature.
For that very purpose he teleported to the site with his exhausted wife Kushina and their children, Natsu, Narumi and Naruto. He already made his decision to have the Nine Tails split into two parts and sealed into his two eldest, Natsu and Narumi, believing that the two will be able to handle the beast's power. He didn't know if Kushina would be able to handle the resealing, since the childbirth was extremely difficult and had nearly cost her life. Especially with Naruto, he needed to act, and act now, as Nine Tails was regaining his bearings. Kushina, I must seal the beast again. Please, lend me your strength. Hold him at bay, Minato asked of Kushina, with her crying out of pain, with golden chains shooting out from her back and restraining the beast. That's it, Kushina, now just hold him. Minato, I can't. Kushina wheezed out before she fell down and lost conciseness, her chains dispelled the very next instant. Kyuubi roared and already began to storm towards Minato and Kushina, intent to kill them with their children. Minato already prepared to teleport his family out of here, when he heard soft feet land near him, forcing him to look to his left. Widening his eyes in surprise, there stood a tall, beautiful woman with long mane of dark red hair, dressed in red and black garments, with a long touchy sword strapped to her hip. She gazed with her crimson eyes at the beast, before the shape of her iris changed into that of Sharingan and then it was activated, immediately stopping the beast in its tracks and literally freezing him in his place. Minato breathed out the name of the woman. Tomo? Minato could hardly believe his eyes, with the woman not even sparing him a glance, far too concentrated on containing the beast. How did you? Does it matter, right now? You wanted to seal that beast back, then get to it, Minato. It takes my all just to maintain my jutsu on him, so hurry it up. Tomo practically snarled at him, as her right eye bled and she felt the pressure from maintaining her ability. Yes, thank you Tomo. Minato thanked her and heavens for this opportunity, as he quickly went ahead and performed the needed hand signs, Reaper Death Seal. Tomo had nearly turned her head to Minato when she heard him but restrained herself. The very next moment, the air grew cold and heavy, as if death itself had appeared here, and both of them knew that it was true, with Minato witnessing Shinigami firsthand. Mortal, for what purpose did you call upon me in this realm? The Shinigami spoke to Minato in a chilling cold tone and voice. I summoned you to have the Nine Tails divided in two and his halves sealed into my eldest children, Natsu and Narumi. Minato spoke to it, with Shinigami seemingly unmoved by his plight. Please, I beg of you. The fate of my village and all of my people is at stake. I care not for them, mortal, but I will do what you ask. Shinigami spoken and went to work. With his ethereal blade, Reaper divided the frozen beast. Before grasping both of the souls with his hands, the moment it happened, Tomo had released her ability and dropped to the ground, panting and breathing heavily, her nostrils filled with blood that rushed out and whole body going numb from the stress. Yet her will maintains her awake, as she watched the two halves of Kyuubi being sealed in the children, Shinigami finished his work quickly, and then turned to Minato, prepared to claim his prize. I've done your bidding. Now you will pay for summoning me. Shinigami spoke as a matter of fact and began to reach for Minato. However, the moment when Shinigami was supposed to grab Minato's soul, something completely unexpected happened. Shinigami, the god of death and one to claim all souls, couldn't grasp Minato, who didn't even know what was happening. It was only a second later that Shinigami spoke up, his harsh voice now filled with disdain and rage. How dare you, mortal, to deny me my rightful prize? You think that tricking death personified will not go unpunished? Shinigami roared at Minato, who flinched and took a step back out of fear. You might have substituted your soul with someone else's in the past, but that doesn't mean I will let this slight stand. You wished for your eldest to have the beast's power, and now you will have your youngest pay for the crime against me. The ghostly hand shot towards crying Naruto, grasping him. No. Minato tried to stop the Shinigami, but was unable, as he was frozen in place. Shinigami reached for the child's soul and was prepared to take it for himself right away. But another thought crossed his mind, born out of malice and anger. Instead of claiming the child right away, he shall make this mortal suffer and watch, as his child is taken by death, piece by piece, while he is unable to do anything. Shinigami grasps Naruto's soul and brands it, immediately putting a stop to Naruto's cries, as a small piece of the child's soul is taken by Shinigami as an appetizer. Once he has done so, he turns to struggling Minato and speaks once more. For your gall and disrespect of this ritual, you and your wife shall watch as this child pays for your crime. Day by day, his soul and all of his being shall be consumed by me, and soon, before long, all that there will be left of your youngest is an empty husk, as his soul is sent to Yomi, to be served on the platter before me and my brothers. That is your punishment, mortal. And with that said, Shinigami had dispelled himself out of this world. In that moment, Tomo saw how Minato dashed towards his children, checking first on his eldest, and only then going to his silent youngest, grasping for him and shaking his hand away. Tomo knew not what had transpired between Minato and Shinigami, but she understood that whatever had happened, Naruto was now the one paying the price for dabbling with powers beyond men's control. It was only then that she had allowed herself to be taken by weakness and fell, closing her eyes. Unknown to all of mortals, Biju, and even Shinigami, there was one more spectator of this event, one that paid extreme attention to what had transpired. For millennia, he had watched mortals, witnessed their cycle of endless destruction, carnage and suffering, and brought about by shinobi and their wars. Fueled by greed, ambitions and hatred, he saw how his very own children and their descendants, the Uzumaki, were made part of that cycle and were consumed for trying to break out of it. His people, their homes and land, all was now ruin and dust, and those that remained were little more than shades of the past, fading away as the dawn rises and brings about the death of his civilization. For millennia he watched, and now, witnessing how the last flicker of hope for his people is now destined to be snuffed out, he breaks his watch. He has had it with the universe taking away all that he cherished. He was going to retaliate against it, and to do this, he shall do what even beings like him would dare not to. He shall go to Yomi, and seek out the one who commands these Shinigami. 6 days later, Konoha's hospital. Well, it looks like your blood pressure is normal, and all of the other tests show that you're free to go home. Tomo, Tsunade Senju spoke, as she looked at the file, while Tomo had breathed, before starting to dress up in her usual garments. However, I would like to remind you, that because of your prolonged usage of your Sharingan and seeing the condition it has left you in, I had sent the report to Hokage. You know what that means, don't you? You don't have to tell me, Tsunade. I long realized that my days as a shinobi were coming to an end, Tomo said with some resignation in her voice, as she pulled up her jacket. How bad did it progress this time? Not as much as I had feared and more than I actually hoped. Tsunade admitted, you should be fine to utilize chakra and most jutsu, even genjutsu, but any utilization of Sharingan, not to mention Mangekyu, and the prognosis isn't looking great. You were still good to go 6 days ago, before the attack, but now, let's just say that you were at the limit of your allowed health. Use Sharingan or even activate it, and then it'll probably be it for you, Tsunade told Tomo, who fastened her sword on her hip. Tomo simply nodded to her, grateful that she didn't lie to her and understanding that she was right. She herself had been about it for a long time now, ever since the war had ended and she was left with nothing but emptiness and void, as well as regrets, sorrow and pain that still lingered in her heart. At least in war she was able to quell her sorrows by drowning them in sounds of battle and death, where she earned her nicknames of Devil of Konoha and Death Queen of Konoha. And those two were just the most famous titles by which enemies of Konoha and what few friends she had knew. Tomo Uchiha, one of the most dangerous and deadly shinobi on the face of earth and a recognized strongest Uchiha in village, Widely believed to be an equal in power and skills to Madara Uchiha in his prime, there are very few who would want to make an enemy out of one kunoichi that made Kushina Uzumaki, her former teammate and rival, look weak by comparison. Yet, for all her power, accomplishments on the battlefield and her service record to Konoha that rivaled that of Minato and Kushina combined, Tomo wasn't as fortunate in life as her former teammate in the man that she once loved. And now was married to that said teammate. She was born to Yumiko Uchiha and Raiko Senju, the only son of second Hokage Tobirama Senju, from whom she inherited her innate abilities and strong chakra.
However, unlike Tsunade and her brother Nawaki, Tomo was born out of wedlock and therefore wasn't recognized as part of Senju clan, while Uchiha clan wanted nothing to do with a bastard child of second Hokage. Add to that her mother dying a few days later due to childbirth complications and her father being murdered on the mission by the third Raikage, Tomo was left alone in this world just a few days after coming to this world. Both Senju and Uchiha wanted to be rid of the child, whom they viewed with contempt and disdain, but before anyone even dared to take a step towards her, Mito Uzumaki, widow of first Hokage, stepped in and took Tomo as her own. She didn't listen to anyone when they demanded that she leave the girl alone, and when she started hearing threats being made towards her, she silenced everyone that even dared to look funny towards Tomo. First Jinchuriki of Nine Tails was a woman of formidable character, one that not even Hashirama and Tobirama dared to challenge, and other Senju clansmen had to remain silent. Mito raised Tomo as if she were her own daughter, and to this day Tomo remembers Mito only as a loving daughter would remember her caring mother. Aside from teaching Tomo secrets to the arts of shinobi and developing her natural skills in elements and swordsmanship, Mito passed on to Tomo her knowledge of sealing arts, something that was only shared among the Uzumaki. Before her passing, Tomo had managed to master most of what Mito had given to her, making her one of the best masters of sealing arts in existence, a natural genius, raised in ways of Senju, with powers of Uchiha and knowledge of Uzumaki. Tomo was practically destined for greatness, yet all she wished was to stay by her mother's side.
Unfortunately for her, that wasn't to come, as when Kushina arrived to the village, the Nine Tails was sealed in her, with Mito now being on the brink of death. The last moments of Mito were spent with her daughter, calming her and telling her how happy she was to have such a wonderful daughter. Mito passed away in Tomo's embrace, and since then, Tomo was left alone again. Uzumaki Princess had made a will in which she named Tomo as her heiress and made sure that everything that Mito owned, including her great library, was left with Tomo. However, the village and third Hokage refused to grant that last request of a woman that had given her entire life to this village. And so they've decided to divide it between Tomo, Kushina and village itself, or more appropriately, greedy counselors and Hokage that wished to get their hands on what Mito owned. To this day Tomo hadn't forgiven them for this slight, while Kushina hadn't forgiven Tomo for what she considered to be theft of what was rightfully hers. It is safe to say that their relations were never amicable past that point. Years followed after Mito's death, and as the new war came, so did Tomo come to shine and realize herself as a great warrior and shinobi. Her exploits rivaled those of Minato, and where he was simply hated, she was feared, having quickly progressed through the ranks of shinobi,
becoming a genin at 10, chunin at 12 and jonin at 15, with her feats growing in merit and greatness. But it wasn't fame or glory that Tomo sought, but affections of Minato Namikaze, a boy and later man that had captured her heart very early on. She had tried to win his affections, but when she saw that he didn't view her as she did him, and that he was in love with Kushina, Tomo decided to not stand in their way, even if it was very painful for her. She was almost starting to come to terms with her decision, when one day, some 3 years ago, Minato actually came to her, looking worse for wear. She knew that Kushina was temperamental and that it could be exhausting handling her, and Tomo honestly didn't even know how Minato handled her when she could barely stand her. That day the two had a really big fight. Tomo didn't know all the details, but it was clear that it was serious enough to make Minato leave Kushina that night and seek her out. Young Uchiha didn't even know how did it come to, but that night she and Minato did something for which he was remorseful on the morrow. While that was the best night Tomo had, her hopes and excitement were crushed when Minato had left her without as much as a good enough apology. She realized that to him, she was just a stress reliever, someone to help vent out frustrations, and it made Tomo feel sick, and she would come to wish that this was the only feeling she would have left after him. As it turned out, Minato left Tomo with something she didn't expect, when a few weeks later she discovered that she was pregnant. Shocked and confused, unable to fully understand what she should do, Tomo went to Minato and told him about her pregnancy. It was clear that he wasn't ready for something like that, and he wasn't going to abandon Kushina. Now that he was once again with her, he had asked Tomo to abort the child and swear to him that she wouldn't tell who the father was. Needless to say, when faced with real Minato Namikaze, Tomo stated that she won't kill her child, and that she will keep it, but she did promise not to tell anyone who was the father. She decided against it because it would only paint a giant target on her back, with Kushina wanting to take the shot. When her pregnancy became obvious to everyone and Tomo was forced to step down from her duties, she simply stated that the father of her child died during one of the battles, a common thing to occur in war, and she was left alone. Tomo delivered her child, ironically, the very same day that Kushina had delivered hers. On October 10th, giving birth to a beautiful boy with dark red hair in his mother's eyes. She named her son Masamune, and those were the happiest days in Tomo's life, as she fully dedicated herself to her son and was even planning to leave shinobi ranks to raise him. However, fate is a cruel mistress towards Tomo, and even now she decided to torment her. A few months after giving birth, Tomo had woken up, ready to feed her child, only to find her son in his crib, not breathing and growing colder with every second. Shock and crushing realization set in Tomo quickly enough, yet she refused to admit it, as she tried desperately to have her son wake up, but nothing, not even Tsunade, was able to help her. In the end, Tomo was forced to admit that her son, her precious little child and dearest person in her life, was dead. Nobody knew for certain why and how did it happen, but villagers and shinobi alike quickly began to blame Tomo for this, calling her child killer and such, with people like Kushina only adding fuel to that. For months Tomo was unable to find consolation and peace, grieving her son's death, blaming herself for it, and gradually succumbing to darkness and desire to end her suffering. Had it not been for Tsunade, who stayed in the village to take care of poor woman, and Tomo's best friend Amagi, Tomo would have long ended her life. Instead, she decided to use that sorrow and grief and turn it into a flame that would burn her enemies alive, and with newly gained Mangekyo Sharingan, Tomo became fury personified. If before she was just feared as a dangerous enemy, then now she was feared as a vengeful spirit made flesh. She didn't hesitate, showed no remorse, and never held back in her battles, taking hundreds of lives, even killing Third Raikage and forcing Kumogakure to sue for peace. And in nearly all of her battles she made extensive use of her new Sharingan abilities, with first one being called Takamagahara. This ability allowed Tomo to create a wide field in which her enemies would find themselves trapped and unable to do anything. Not even take a breath. Everything within that field would be frozen, safe for what Tomo wished to remain mobile, with not even Minato not able to escape such a trap. Third Hokage too fell into that trap, before his head lost connection with the rest of his body. As for her second ability, it was something that was even more dangerous than her first ability, and she only used it a couple of times before. However, her usage of Mangekyo didn't come without price. Only Tomo decided not to notice it, as she was performing at her best. Only after Tsunade had to perform a forceful examination did it come to light that Tomo's body was starting to suffer from effects of constant usage of Mangekyo. Her Senju blood had prevented her from developing blindness and made her Sharingan as strong as it could be. But sheer amount of times she used it was enough to leave a mark on Tomo. Her chakra pathways and body were suffering from extreme pressure upon them and deteriorated when she used her abilities. If she wasn't careful, Tomo would die from simply using her abilities, and so when the war ended, she ceased usage of her abilities. The only time afterwards she used her Sharingan was when she had trapped Nine Tails in Takamagahara, and that one had landed her in hospital. Now Tomo wasn't even allowed to ever utilize her Sharingan, else she dies with near complete certainty. Finishing dressing up, Tomo fixed up her hair a little bit and walked out from the curtain and stepped closer to Tsunade. "So, this is it for me?" Tomo asked her, with Tsunade nodding to her. "Can't say I'll miss being a shinobi, if I am being honest. Well, at least I'll have more time to spend for everything else. You could always ask to be put in academy as a teacher, if anyone could teach those brats what it means to be a shinobi." "Don't even think about it." Tsunade chuckled lightly when she heard that. "I have had my fill of academy the first time I went there. I won't be spending the rest of my life teaching up and coming heroes of Konoha how to tie up their shoes. No, I think I really did have enough of shinobi life. Maybe it's time to see if there really is more to life than just service to the village that will throw you out like garbage first time it gets the opportunity." "Since when did you become such a cynic?" Tsunade asked her. "Since I was born," Tomo answered. "Sorry if I don't preach will of fire and speak about sacrificing oneself for village. I like to practice what I preach, and following hollow ideals isn't one of those things. You know, that is one of the reasons why people try to avoid you, Tomo, Tsunade pointed out. You would do well not to voice your ideas without caution, especially now. You have nothing to worry about, Tsunade. It's not like I am the most socially approachable person, so you can relax, Tomo sighed, as she moved towards door. Leaving for home, I hope. Tomo clearly heard a small request in Tsunade's voice. In a bit, I'll just make a stop before that, Tomo said, opening door and stepping through it. I hope it's not at Naruto's room. Tsunade caught Tomo looking her in the eye, already understanding that she was on point. Tomo, it's not normal for you, or anyone else, to be visiting a baby of your rival, especially when he isn't well. You know, rumors have already spread about it and people are starting to think that you might be connected to Naruto's condition. And since when did I care about people's opinion? Tomo asked Tsunade, as they continued to make their way. For most of my life people have been belittling, accusing and blaming me for something. One more thing won't make much a difference for me, and as for that kid, I don't really see him as Kushina's son. Tomo, he isn't Masamune, and, Tsunade tried to speak up, but the moment she met Tomo's glare, she shut up. Don't, Tsunade, just don't, Tomo warned her, before resuming walking. It's not about what you thought, and I must be spoken wrong. I don't see Naruto as simply Kushina's son, I just see him as a poor child that has seemingly been abandoned by everyone, including his parents. He is constantly under surveillance and there are nurses and doctors monitoring his condition, Tsunade countered. I come to him twice a day to check up on him. Yeah, monitoring, checking up, surveying, Tomo shook her head. Tell me, how many of you have just come in and just sat there with him, kept him company? Maybe, held his hand to make sure that he knows that he isn't alone. The answer is simple. None. Sorry if I come off as weird, but it just doesn't sit right with me, Tsunade, especially with his parents not even bothering to be with him for more than a few minutes. Do please remember that Minato is a Hokage and that we've just been through the worst devastation of our village since its conception, and that Kushina is a feeding mother of 2, Tsunade reminded to Tomo. 3, Tomo said. Sorry, 3, not 2, Naruto too is her child, Tomo reminded Tsunade. I remember it all. Yet Minato finds time for seemingly everything, including his wife and children if Amagi is to be believed, while Kushina doesn't even want to look at Naruto. Tomo, you realize that the kid isn't long for this world, right? Tsunade said in a saddened tone, with Tomo not reacting to it. We've done everything we could. I've tried every single medical jutsu I could remember, and yet nothing, not a single thing helps him. He is just dying, and it is devastating for both parents, and they are dealing with it however they can. By pretending that he is already dead and leaving him here alone to pass away in these cold, uncaring walls, surrounded by people who wouldn't even take time to sit with him. Tomo commented with harsh tone, I know that he is not long for this world, Tsunade, and that whatever it is that kills him is beyond your abilities. I honestly don't know how he is still going, either through fate's perverse mercy, or because of some other reason, but, the least we can do for the kid is to make him feel better, make him feel cared for. Dying alone and without anyone around, that isn't a death I would wish for any child. When did you become such a good Samaritan? Tsunade asked her in a slightly annoyed tone. It's called decency and humanity, Tsunade, maybe you should try it sometimes, it does wonders for a person and soul, Tomo retorted. Indeed it does, the two heard a soft voice ahead of them, making them stop and look at the person. Before them stood a stunningly beautiful woman with chocolate brown long hair reaching to her hips. With purple eyes, dressed in a dark kimono with crane motif on it, which hugged her very impressive figure snugly, while also wearing a light long open red coat over kimono. She had a soft smile on her face, as she looked at her friend, who nodded to her, before bowing before Tsunade out of respect, with the woman in question simply nodding her. This beauty was Amagi, Tomo's closest friend and head priestess of goddess Inari in the local shrine temple, as well as the only priestess serving there. Little is actually known about Amagi's past, save for the fact that she had served as priestess of Inari for most of her life and came to Konoha when she heard that the shrine there wasn't attended to and was practically forgotten. Amagi managed to somehow not only gain citizenship, but also permission to repair and reopen the temple for the people, with none knowing how she managed that. Tomo too didn't know how did she accomplish it, but what she did know about Amagi was that she is a sincere, peaceful and respectful young woman that makes heads turn of nearly every man that sees her. Among kunoichi and civilians none can compete with Amagi in sheer beauty. For she has a face of a goddess and a figure fitting one. with Jiraiya having been caught trying to catch a glimpse of her outside of her usual kimono more times than he was in peeping in hot springs. Even Tsunade was slightly jealous of Amagi, who had everything that was needed to conquer anyone she could have set her sights upon. Fortunately for the populace, or unfortunately, depending on the opinion, Amagi had little to no interest in romance, as she was dedicated to her calling and didn't want to abandon it. Not that she wasn't against a little bit of flirting and compliments, she simply once told Tomo that during her younger days she was quite a kitsune, with a soft chuckle followed afterwards. The way Tomo understood it, Amagi has had her wild days and now decided to put it behind her. Despite the fact that Amagi had literally no interest in most things shinobi and hidden villages. Amagi and Tomo quickly became friends, and without her, Tomo most likely wouldn't have recovered after losing her son. The two were a common sight in the village, with Tomo enjoying Amagi's company and their talks about all sorts of things. From arts to religion and mythology, interests to which Tomo possessed thanks to Mito teaching her more than just how to kill, steal and be a shinobi. Uzumaki Princess raised Tomo to be a culturally attuned person, someone who wasn't just a blunt weapon without any grace, but a graceful, educated and spiritually rich person. Even if Tomo didn't show it, Amagi was quick to discover Tomo's softer and more humane side, which brought them together, as Amagi was someone people would describe as having a bleeding heart for everyone. While shinobi in their vast majority weren't very religious or spiritually rich and interested in philosophy, religion, mythology and so forth, Amagi wasn't the most popular person among them, often even being called a fool because of her beliefs in things like gods, yokai, spirits, ghosts and so forth. Amagi wasn't really upset because of it and doesn't mind people speaking like that. What she can't abide is when people are trying to force others' beliefs upon others, caring not for the feelings of the enforced ones. And as for the common people, not counting counselors, Amagi is most definitely not just a very popular person, but a highly respected and even revered one, since she was head priestess of Inari, goddess of fertility, agriculture, trade and many other things, which were central in peasants, traders and other common folks' lives. She performed burying ceremonies, weddings and so forth, so people loved her for both her role and for her persona. Overall, the population of Konoha was nice towards Amagi, in worst cases neutral towards her. Even Uchiha clan, surprisingly for all, didn't dare to disrespect her, and since many of the Uchiha clansmen had their own small shops and businesses in their own district, they came to shrine to pray for success and good trade. It was, however, surprising for Tomo to see her friend here, since she expected her to be very busy with burial ceremonies, prayers for the dead and so forth, not to mention rebuilding her shrine, if it was caught in the destruction. Amagi, I wasn't expecting to see you here, are you alright? Tomo asked her, were you and your shrine caught in the devastation? I am quite well, all things considered, thank you for asking, Tomo. I was fortunate that the shrine was some ways away from Ninetales' path of destruction, so the shrine suffered only superficial damage. I'll have it repaired in no time, once people are finished with their own works, Amagi answered. And here I thought you've already had gotten yourself a brigade of simpletons repairing that temple of yours. Why the wait when you can just ask for it to be repaired? Surely some rich businessmen will be willing to accommodate their favorite fortune teller, Tsunade snidely stated, with Tomo giving her a cold glare, but Amagi didn't seem to be fazed in any way at the insult. The people have far more important things on their mind right now, and it is not my place or time to distract them with my small-time problems, Lady Tsunade, Amagi retorted, and like I said, the damage is mostly superficial and nothing was damaged seriously, so I count myself very fortunate, unlike so many others that are now without home or worse, without someone dear to them. Then why don't you go and pray for those poor unfortunate souls, like you priestesses seem to always do all the time? Maybe you could also ask your deity to have them restored for life. I am sure if you ask very nicely, that fox of yours will bring them back, Tsunade stated with blatant sarcasm in her voice. Tsunade, Tomo was about to stop her, but Amagi didn't let Tomo finish. Tomo, it is quite all right. It is true that I pray for those that have died on that night. And even now, in my thoughts, I am praying for them to find their way to better world, and it is unfortunate that they are gone, taken away prematurely and in such a horrid way, Amagi stated to Tsunade, and if I could, I would ask for Goddess Inari to bring them back, but I can't, and I know that Inari doesn't hold that kind of power, and that Izanami governs over the souls of dead in Yomi, where they are headed, but I know that she too wouldn't grant me such a wish. Then what good those gods are if they can't do jack about anything? Tsunade asked of Amagi. Gods do not exist just to grant people their wishes, Lady Tsunade. Gods exist for a reason that is their existence and purpose, just as we all do. I may be mistaken, but gods exist to govern a plane that is beyond first now, and to preserve the realm we reside in now. We may not see them or even feel them, but that doesn't mean that they do not exist, Amagi stated with soft tone, yet confident in her voice. And would it be such a shock for the people to discover if they really do exist? We do have talking animals of the size that any normal person would consider abnormal and monstrous. Those are summons, and they are different from those yokai and spirits that you always spout about in your delirious. Tsunade was starting to get really riled up, but then she felt Tomo put her hand on Tsunade's shoulder, forcing the blonde to face her glaring relative. Tsunade, thank you for walking me, but I'll be able to find my way out, and you can tell Shizune not to expect me for dinner. I'll be staying with Amagi for a while, helping her clean up her shrine. Tomo made it clear that it wasn't up for discussion. All right, just make sure that you and your friend do not disturb anyone, Tsunade said, as she headed to perform her main duties, leaving Tomo to sigh and look at her friend. I am sorry for her behavior. She still can't get over what had happened to Naoki, and there are times when she feels like taking it out on someone. Tomo sighed again. While I do sympathize with her losses, I am afraid that I don't quite understand her animosity towards me. I do not recall ever angering her, or that something connected to religion had played a part in death of her little brother, Amagi noted. It's not about religion or what you believe in, but more about what it reminds her, Tomo told Amagi, who looked at her with a question in her eyes. Naoki, much like me, was closer to Mito than to Tsunade, and thanks to that, he gained an appreciation for all things supernatural. Like with yokai and gods, Tsunade never liked that seeming obsession of his, and so now every time she hears about it, she gets reminded of Naoki and... I see. Amagi understood what her friend meant. Let's change the subject, shall we? I see you are finally getting released. I wish I could welcome you for a quiet night together, but I am afraid that it'll be quite hard for us to relax at the temple, at least for the time being. Why? Did something happen during the attack? Tomo asked of Amagi. No, more like an aftermath of the attack. While many people have died, many more were left homeless and without much possessions on them. While the repair works have already started, it's the Shinobi District, clan estates and strategically valuable areas that get priorities to being repaired, Amagi stated to Tomo, and, as I am sure you've seen yourself, over half of civilian portion of the village was destroyed, and people that live there now have nowhere to go, and so, given the fact that temple and its grounds weren't damaged, I've decided to let those people stay on the grounds, until they can go home again. You've turned the temple into a refugee camp for several thousand refugees? Tomo asked, with Amagi nodding to her. Won't Inari be against it? Well, I did say that in order to appease the goddess, they would have to follow a certain set of rules, like cleaning the grounds, providing help when I needed and other simple things like that, Amagi noted, and if goddess is displeased, I am sure I'll be able to convince her that it was for the better of everyone, though I doubt it'll even come to it. Inari is a kind goddess and isn't as temperamental as some other gods. You always speak about her as if you know her, Amagi, Tomo noticed, with Amagi simply giving a small smile to her. I imagine the council appreciates your initiative. I hope they will at least compensate you for going through all the trouble. I don't know, did Minato reward you for helping him stop the fox when he didn't ask you for help? Amagi asked, with Tomo understanding what her friend meant. I see, but at least the people will know whom to thank when their own supposed representatives have turned their back against them, Tomo said, as she continued walking. I think I'll still stop by, at least to see how things really are. Be my guest, Tomo, you are always welcome there. Forgive me for asking, but are you in a hurry to meet someone? Amagi asked her, with Tomo glancing at her. I've noticed that you aren't heading for the exit. Is there someone you want to see before you leave? There is, Tomo nodded to her. I am not sure if you've heard, but while I was recovering here, I've started to pay visits to Naruto, Minato's and Kushina's youngest son, Tomo said, with Amagi nodding to her. I know that it sounds kind of strange for to do such a thing, but that kid, when I look at him, I can't just shake of the feeling that he feels lonely and is scared, despite how he looks. You may just start calling me crazy now, Amagi. If acting sympathetic and humane towards those that for some reason are left alone when they are not well, then being crazy isn't so bad in my mind, Tomo. Naturally, Amagi didn't judge Tomo. I've heard about the poor boy and his strange illness. Many claim that it is a curse sent upon the child by the Biju for imprisoning him and his brother and sister. Lord Hokage and his wife haven't confirmed or disclaimed those rumors, so nobody knows for certain what is going on with him. Doctors and Tsunade don't know either, and the kid just seems to fade away with each passing day. He is weaker every day and it appears that he might just pass away tomorrow or a day after tomorrow, if what I heard is true, Tomo said with sadness in her voice, as they were nearing the child's room, before Tomo turned to Amagi. Amagi, what do you know about the Shinigami? The gods of the dead and reapers of souls. They are creatures that reside in the realm of the dead. Yomi, and serve goddess of death and creation, Izanami. They are charged with seeing the souls of the dead being sent to either hell or heaven, as well as collecting them from the mortal realms. Most of the time they operate outside of the reach of normal people, unseen by them. Amagi told Tomo, but I know of a few cases where they were purposefully summoned, but every summoning of the Shinigami is a certain death sentence, because the summoner is killed by Shinigami afterwards, Tomo concluded. But, Amagi, do the legends tell of any way to summon a Shinigami, but not die afterwards, say, shift the price on someone else? Tomo, summoning a Shinigami is always one-way trip. No matter how try to trick it, Amagi said in a serious tone of voice. I have heard of one legend where a man had managed to survive such a thing, but it didn't happen because of Shinigami being merciful to him. The man in question had previously warded himself off of Shinigami, but I do not know how he had done it. What I do know is that later on he had buried his wife, as the Shinigami had taken her from him as a payment and because it felt slighted by being denied its prize. Tomo, why are you asking me all of this? Being denied of the prize, I am asking you, because on the night of the attack, Minato had used Reaper Death Seal, a sealing jutsu that summons a Shinigami to create a seal of incredible power. Tomo stated, much to the shock of Amagi, I know how to perform it too and I know the effects, but that night, Minato didn't die, but I have a feeling that it is Naruto who is paying the price now. It very well may be so. Shinigami are dangerous creatures to deal with. Is this the child's room? Amagi asked, with Tomo nodding to her, before opening it. There, in a sterile clean room, strapped to the monitors. On a medical bed laid a small, unmoving child, with pale skin. Closed eyes and just barely seen breathing. He didn't wail, cry or even move a muscle, and just simply laid there. A dark red patch of hair with streaks of white adorned his head. With eyes shut and it created the appearance of the child being asleep. Tomo knew that it wasn't the case and that the child was simply too weak at this point to even open his eyes, as she moved closer to him, taking a seat near him and very gently putting her right hand upon Naruto's little arm. He was colder than she remembered him to be, but every time she visited him, he felt colder than previously. Back when she first visited him, he still looked at her with his blue eyes, but yesterday he wasn't able to open them and couldn't move a muscle. Now he couldn't even react to her. But somehow Tomo knew that Naruto felt her presence. She looked at him with sympathy in her eyes, before shifting her gaze at Amagi. Before freezing, Amagi stood just there, her mouth agape and tears coming to her eyes, hands shaking, as she walked closer to the child. By the gods, how something so cruel could have happened to a child? Amagi asked in a shock, with her purple eyes looking directly at Naruto, as if seeing something that none could see. Amagi, Tomo asked her, what? Is there something wrong? Something wrong. This child has been branded by Shinigami, Tomo. Amagi almost shouted, shocking Tomo. This isn't just wrong, it is monstrous. What do you mean? What does it mean, being branded by Shinigami? Tomo asked of her, with Amagi calming down a little, before quickly closing the door into the room. Afterwards, she stepped closer to Naruto, lightly putting her hand upon Naruto's stomach. Before she began to chant, Tomo had heard her friend chant prayers and such before. But this one was different, and she could sense that something was going on that she couldn't perceive just yet. After a few seconds of chant, Tomo saw how Amagi's hand glowed with unnatural golden light as she touched the child. The moment she touched Naruto, a dark unnatural cloud appeared all around him. With a kanji on his stomach being revealed to both women, Tomo looked at the kanji and nearly shuddered when she saw the shifting lines of that ethereal thing. This is the brand of Shinigami, one of the most horrific curses one can find in all of existence, Amagi told Tomo. Those that have been branded do not find their souls being sent to hell or heaven, but suffer a far worse fate. They become food for Shinigami, souls torn apart and devoured by the death gods, and Naruto's soul is nearly gone already to Yomi, to be served on the platter to the one who branded him. How did you know that it was there, and what was it all about chanting and that glowing hand? It wasn't a jutsu, but it was something different, Tomo noted. I am no shinobi, Tomo, but those that think that world is inhabited by just those creatures that they know of are wrong in their assessment, and that is all I shall say on the matter at the moment, Amagi told Tomo. This child, it pays for his father's actions. Is there any way to have this brand removed, or blocked from action? I know every seal created by the Uzumaki, there might just be. Tomo was hopeful that with this information, she would at least be able to help the child. I am sorry, Tomo, but once branded, there is no escape. The brand can't be destroyed, removed or passed on to someone else. Only someone of the highest planes of existence can remove something like this, and in this case, it would have to be the one who commands the Shinigami, Izanami, Amagi said with sadness in her voice. Before looking at the child, I am afraid that there is nothing that we can do, no matter what we try, and there isn't much time left for him. How long? Several hours, at most, I believe, Amagi said to Tomo. Then, the least we can do to him is keep him company, at least so he wouldn't be so scared, Tomo said with a resigned tone, with Amagi agreeing with her, sitting next to the child. If only the two know what was happening in the higher plane of existence. Different plane of existence, Yomi, land of the dead. Dark and inhospitable, where all that was living could not exist under any conditions. That was Yomi, the realm of the dead, and where all souls eventually found their way. It truly lived up to its name, for the realm thrived in shadows. Plains where deadliest and poisonous grass grew, with trees wrecked with death, and where only creatures that are spawned here can survive. No living mortal should step into Yomi, lest they seek to remain here, only in form of its occupant, or a ghost in other words, and not every god or goddess braves these lands, but the one who was walking down the road leading to the dark castle situated right in the middle of this endless and desolate realm. It was a tall man of a godly physique, with long and luscious black mane of hair reaching to the middle of his back. His eyes were the color of gold, with a third eye closed on his forehead. With 3 lines crossing it, he had a beautiful face of a man in his late 20s without a speck of flaw upon his fair skin. His torso was exposed, revealing a body that any woman would drool over. With black pants and sandals covering his legs, he walked with a spear, or more specifically, a trident, in his right hand, made pitch black material and with golden central spear adorning it. He traversed the realm of Yomi long and hard, ever since he departed from the realm of mortals, but he was now near his destination and he was going to see his will be done. In front of the traditional-looking castle stood guard numerous ogre-like creatures. Massive in size and easily dwarfing the man, those were Oni. Yokai, created from evil, malice and dark energies. And who resided here in Yomi, serving as punishers of the evildoers and those that deserved its fate here. They also were frequent terrorizers of the mortal realms when they could escape from here. And more often than not, when people spoke of about Oni being real, they really were, armed with giant clubs, axes, swords and all that was fit for their size and stature. A literal army stood watch before the castle, with its commander now approaching the traveling person. He was a red Oni with a white mane, dressed in armor of the samurai and with a giant odachi for a weapon. He looked down at the traveler and bellowed down on him. What's this? A lost traveler. You are very far from home, pilgrim, and you should not have wandered here on your own. Oni spoke with laughter, while the man did not bat an eye. But it is good that you've arrived to us. I and my boys have been getting bored and mistress won't give us any drinks. So now well have you entertain us. If you provide us with enough fun, we might actually let you live. Other Oni laughed when the commander spoke, but then all of them went silent when the man spoke. I've come to see your mistress. Step aside, Oni. The traveler's tone indicated that he was serious. Huh, or what? You think you can just come here and demand a meeting with our mistress without any care in the world? You think you threaten us in our realm? Let's see how you taste. Oni commander already raised his sword and prepared to swing it. Only to find his head cut off before anyone could even bat an eye. And when the severed lump of flesh hit the ground, the field was sounded with cries and shouts of pain. 2,000 Oni guarded the entrance into the castle, and it took 0.2 of a second of the stranger to cut through these beastly monstrosities. One such creature could be dangerous to deal with even for dozens of shinobi deal with. And there were instances in history with Oni destroyed or literally ate entire clans of shinobi, but for this person, they were merely dust that tried to stop the tsunami. With his sheer will, he opened the great gates of the castle and stepped through them into the inner yard of the keep. It was there that he was greeted by the second line of defenders of this castle, an army of shinigami, assembled and ready to destroy this invader. The stranger didn't stop and continued to move forward, despite the fact that not even most gods would want to face such a dangerous force head-on. The leading Shinigami stepped before the stranger and spoke in a grave-inducing voice. You trespass upon the domain of death, living one. There is nothing for you to gain here, only death which you brought upon yourself today. Shinigami stated to him, whatever you wished to gain, whatever you sought to accomplish, know that all of it shall end in your infinite suffering for trespassing upon the lands of our mistress. I seek an audience with your mistress, Deathbringer. If you or anyone else wishes to stand in my way, then I shall not hold back. Stranger stated to them, my patience is running thin, as is the time of your existence. Step aside, or become naught but memory. That riled up the Shinigami, and they had already prepared to launch themselves at the intruder, when the invisible hand of their mistress stopped them. The mistress, she will see you, living one. At those words, the horde of Shinigami stepped aside and allowed the stranger his passage. The stranger continued his walk into the castle, doors opening before him, releasing a chilling wind, which didn't bother the man as he walked forward. It took him a minute to reach the great hall of the castle, where upon the throne sat the person he sought to converse with. Upon the throne, made what looked obsidian, sat an absolutely ebony white woman, dressed in black figure-fitting robes with short sleeves and cape, her hair long and made into a bun and 6 offshoots. Sclera of her eyes was black, while iris bloody red. With them eyeing the intruder, dark red veins ran across her whole form, seemingly pulsating with power. A small smile was upon her as she looked at the intruder with no hidden amount of interest. She was the first one to speak. Many eons have passed since you've last stepped into my realm, she spoke in a calm, welcoming tone. Forgive my minions, they seem to have forgotten their manners before their betters, especially one that is my blood and descent, she said with a smile, feeling the rippling sense of fear coming from the inhabitants of Yomi at her statement. I came here caring not for their manners and etiquette. I have come here seeking your aid and your favor, Izanami. The stranger spoke to her, bowing his head. My favor? Now why would I ever deprive my grandson of my favor? She asked rhetorically, before she rose from her throne and walked to him. Now, raise your head, Shiva, and tell me, what does God of destruction and creation wishes of goddess of death and creation? I've come to you from Sakai, the realm where, Shiva instantly saw how Izanami's face twisted from anger at the mention of that world. Where Kagaya had went and where she, along with your brothers, have dared to upset the natural order of development. That realm still reels from the devastation they brought with their battle, and the consequences. I need not tell you of just what the consequences are, don't I? Izanami clearly saw how a flare of anger flashed in the golden eyes of her grandson. I've seen and felt how my world suffered and nearly was destroyed when my mother and brothers had battled. I was the one that saved it and humanity from being destroyed. Do not remind me of it, and I have not forgotten the catastrophe that were Hagoromo's sons. Shiva clenched his trident a little harder. Indra's pride, Ashura's carelessness and Hagoromo's ignorance had plunged my world into a cycle of endless warfare and death, which sees mankind stagger and stop in their development. Even my people were destroyed in that mauling cycle, which saw my wife cry tears for 10 years, so do not remind me of the consequences, Izanami. I've come here to you to see that mess finally rectified, Shiva stated with conviction to her. Oh, so you are finally willing to do it. I must admit, Shiva, I am a little surprised and shocked that it took you so long to get to this point, Izanami admitted to him. Care to tell, what caused such a sudden shift in priorities? You were once a supporter of their natural development, so to speak, but now, have you realized that those mortals won't change themselves? Or have you seen the threads of fate weave into one outcome for them? All of the above, Shiva admitted to Izanami, as you are aware. I am capable of perceiving the possible outcomes of future. And because of that, I've come to you, Izanami. Threads weave into one distinct ending for Sakai. And that is the death of humanity. No matter the variables, the outcome is the same and it remains that way. For humanity, or rather, shinobi, will not change their ways, no matter how they try. Not even that man, Hashirama Senju, was able to change them or change the cycle. All he had done was enlarge the scale and drag my descendants into that chaos. I am sick and tired of watching it go on, and I've come to break this wheel. And how do you wish to break it? What do you need of me? Permission to destroy it. Go ahead and do it. Worlds are born and destroyed throughout the cosmos all the time, and other gods will probably not even notice if that world gets destroyed, Izanami said without the care in the world. No, you are not here to see it destroyed, you are here for something far more interesting, aren't you? Some time ago, in Sakai, there was an incident, involving one of my brother's spawns, Kurama. You should have noticed the sudden torrent of souls coming in, Shiva spoke up. Yes, that has occurred, and along with that, one of my Shinigami had been summoned in that realm by a mortal, yet failed to deliver me the soul of the summoner, Izanami noted, before giving him a knowing smile. I am aware that you were also observing that place, and that you've come here to seek to take what that Shinigami gained. I was not aware you were also paying attention to that, Shiva said. I didn't, but the guest who arrived before you did inform me about it all, Izanami told him. Isn't that right, my dear Parvati? Shiva widened his eyes when he heard it, and then he heard soft footsteps behind him, making him turn around. Before him stood the most beautiful woman for him in all of Cosmos. One that had become his eternal companion and love of his life. Mother to his children and female beginning to all of Uzumaki to his male beginning to Uzumaki. The embodiment of loyalty and love to one's family, along with warrior's spirit and mercilessness to all of evil. She stood just a little shorter than him, with purple-like sakura long hair, with a flower on the left side of her, purple eyes gazing into his. She wears a blue blouse with golden embroidery and short sleeves, complemented by the same colored shirt that reaches to the floor. She flashed him a loving smile, before grasping Shiva's cheek and speaking up to her husband. You've left with such haste and without saying a word, that I was worried you would destroy half of Yomi upon your arrival. I was fortunate that our son had lent me his peacock and I was able to arrive here faster, so as to hasten what you wished to accomplish, Parvati told Shiva, who stood motionless and surprised. You were aware of my goals, Parvati? Shiva asked of her, with her nodding to him. Your thoughts are well known to me, and it is no secret that you grieve for the death of Uzumaki people. Just as I do, Parvati said, with a single tear coming out from her eye. Not a moment goes by that I do not return with my thoughts to them and what became of them. They were swallowed up by the corrupted world and grinded into ashes, because they were different from the rest of them and tried to break out of the cycle. Do not forget that I was there when my children fell and that it was I who claimed the heads of all those that dared to set foot upon our isle. Shiva and Izanami clearly saw how Parvati's eyes blazed with crimson red for a moment, before returning to their previous color. And also their souls from me and my hounds, but I do not mind that. Knowing what fate awaited those arrogant shinobi that had dared to set foot upon the Uzu was enough of a satisfaction for me to not demand recompense for being denied what was mine. Izanami chuckled darkly, as she moved slowly throughout the hall. Now, let us get down to business, as the mortals like to say. What is it that you what, really? The soul of the child that was marked, Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki, it is being absorbed by your Shinigami, Shiva spoke up, with Izanami stopping, with her face displaying displeasure after hearing of it. I am prepared to grant you any recompense that would accommodate your wish. The matter isn't in just recompense, but rather in the fact that the part of soul of that child that was taken thus far, has already been consumed by that Shinigami, Izanami stated to them, shocking both Shiva and Parvati. What? For the first time since coming here, Shiva allowed himself to lose what little self-restraint he had, which resulted in the entire floor of Izanami's castle being now cracked and damaged, but it was instantly repaired at the will of Izanami. The Shinigami in question was so irked and angered by what he considered to be a personal offense and theft that he didn't wait for the soul to fully reform in Yomi. Instead, he satiated his hunger upon it when it got in here. Piece by piece, Izanami informed them both, I only learned of it when I decided to check it myself. That upstart didn't even pretend to be sorry, relishing the flavor of that child's soul. And for that I ended his existence. I do not have any need in cruel sadists that care for their own pride than doing their duties properly. Unfortunately, it still means that the rest of the boy's soul is lost, and the last part that shall be arriving here soon will become food for my Shinigami, and even if I were to lift the brand off of him, he would still die mere days later. Given the fact that his soul is so fractured and small, he would return here to be reformed and then later to be reborn. Such a shame, for this poor unfortunate soul, to die so soon twice in a row, and all because of the same people. Then, there is nothing to be done. That child, can't we save him in any way? Even if, Parvati was starting to sound like she was losing hope, until Shiva spoke up. No, there is still something that we can do, Parvati, and we will, Izanami, lift that brand off of him, Shiva demanded of her, intriguing her with his conviction. His human soul may be not long for the mortal realm, but that doesn't mean that there isn't time to save him. And how would you do it, my grandson? Izanami asked of him, with Parvati looking curiously at him. The same way that the Uzumaki people came to be in the first place, we will directly grant him our blessings, Shiva stated to Izanami, surprising her and Parvati. The same way you've made Kagaya and her first husband your children, we will adopt him. You would do this to that child, only to see your desires fulfilled and to see that world changed. Izanami saw that her grandson had glared at her, for implying that he was heartless. No, there is something deeper than that. Could it be that you feel guilty for not preserving your children and wish to atone for your sins through him? Would go as far as to disregard the decree of other gods about our neutrality in the lives of mortals. Would you really break the established balance, Shiva, when you were the one who swore to uphold it? I swore to uphold the cycle of life, the infinite process of change and evolution of life. Sakai suffers from stagnation and cyclic existence that serves only further the system of death. Destruction and corruption, the people have lost their harmonious way of living with nature and can't even see the full of their world. Shiva said with mix of sadness and anger in his voice. Parvati moved to comfort him. The so-called balance you've spoken about, Izanami, is a perversion of change and an aberration. My brother had believed that humanity could harness chakra and use it come together, disregarding the fact that humanity wasn't ready to be entrusted with such power. His sons had shown the flaws of his ways when they've started the cycle of death. I've had enough of their mistakes destroying the world and humanity, and I have had enough of living with guilt of not saving my children. My last child now lies dying and I will not abandon him. Such conviction and strong words. Just the things I would expect to hear from you, Shiva, Izanami said to him with a small smile. Very well, I shall lift the brand, and I'll even help you too with your idea, by adding a little bit of myself into your mix. That shocked them both. You will, but what do you stand to gain from it, Lady Izanami? Parvati asked of her. A new grandson, from the start, and to give that poor soul a far better chance of surviving in the treacherous world. Not to mention someone I could spoil rotten like a grandmother. Izanami said at first amusingly, as she sat in her throne, but aside from that, I too would like to have my vengeance upon the destroyers of Uzumaki. They were of my bloodline, and unlike my former husband, I do not forget and forgive such things, and that child will be able to satiate my need for retribution. But even right now, I already stand to gain what I had wanted for eons, but couldn't reach. Izanami looked with a knowing eye at Shiva, who suddenly understood what she wanted. You would have me deliver you the souls of my brothers and their sons. Izanami, Shiva was about to argue with her, but she interrupted him. You wish to have that child saved and you've said that you would do anything for it, haven't you, Shiva? Then prove to me now that those were not just words. Right now, I know that you've swore off from touching your brother's souls and children, but we both know that they are still responsible for the chaos that plagues Sakai, and they continue to remain unpunished. At least, some of them still do so. Izanami said to them, Hamura's line has extinguished itself, and his soul has passed through my realm already, so that leaves you, Shiva, with only 3 other souls to collect for me. So what shall be your decision, my grandson? Shiva looked right in the eye of Izanami, reading a direct challenge to his convictions and determination. And there was a struggle between his desires and memory of the past. He had loved and respected his brothers, and when they were still young, he could never see himself do harm to them, but the times had changed and he was forced to change with them. And then came Indra and Ashura. They had destroyed what little chance humanity had for change and harmony by plunging it into the chaos of war. Back then, only his love for Hagoromo had stopped him from decimating them both, and then later he had to serve not just his own realm, but many others. Now he was asked to prove that his decision was finally see the wrongs made right was strong in his mind. After millennia of indecisiveness and cowardice, Shiva was ready to what was needed to be done. Detaching himself from Parvati, he moved to the center of the room and connected through the cosmos with Sakai and its living beings. Even from Yomi, creator and destroyer god could sense and see the chakras of Hagoromo and his sons. As well as connect them directly, his search for them was short, as he found the reincarnations of Indra and Ashura, as well as the soul of his brother, seemingly scattered throughout all of chakra that he had given to the mortals. Such a seemingly impossible task for most beings, such as locating souls that were literally entwined with chakra, was a small feat for Shiva, just as it was locking on to them and bringing them to Yomi directly. With his will in mind, Shiva detached the souls from the young children. Not hurting them or their own souls in any way, but freeing them from the fate of the 1,000 predecessors that came before. Now they were truly allowed to be what they wanted to be, without Indra and Ashura interfering in their lives and fates through their presence in them. As for his own brother, it took more effort from Shiva, but he did what needed to be done, as Sakai had felt a very tiny rippling effect upon itself throughout chakra, one that will go unnoticed for most, save for that are strongly attuned with natural energy of Sakai. With those tasks being completed, Shiva opened his eyes and with a light movement hit his trident's bottom upon the floor. Summoning the 3 into this realm, 2 circles of light formed in front of him, Parvati and Izanami, and from them emerged 3 figures, all looking as if they were in the prime. Indra and Ashura, looking as young as they were when they had begun to their feud, with Hagoromo emerging in the middle of the 2, looking like he was far older than when he had his sons. They looked confused, before Hagoromo noticed with his Rinnegan eyes his youngest brother, Shiva, speaking to him. Shiva, where have you summoned us? For what purpose have you ripped us out of chakra? Hagoromo demanded to know, before he took the look around himself. This place, it reeks of death, and is this what I think it is? Father, brother, how are you all here, alive and so young? Ashura asked of them, before getting into the fighting stance. Doesn't matter how you've cheated death, Indra, I'll make sure to end you once and for all. Then stop barking and come at me, you little fool. Indra goaded him, readying himself for a fight, until both he and Ashura were stopped by Shiva, who materialized his divine chains from his back and used to them to subdue his unruly nephews. What the hell are these? Uzumaki chains. That is quite enough, both of you. You've spent literal millennia in your unending battle, dragging countless souls into the abyss with you, shaping the very future of the world into an unending conflict and denying humanity a chance to grow past its infantile stages, Shiva stated to them both, holding them firmly in place. Now it is time you've faced the punishment for your actions, nephews. Shiva, what are you talking about? Why have you summoned us all here? Hagoromo asked of him. He is doing what needed to be done eons ago, Hagoromo. Izanami finally made herself known to the three, shocking Hagoromo instantly. You and your sons are guilty of quite horrendous crimes. And you've escaped your punishment for far too long. No one has the right to deny me what is mine upon the death of all creatures, yet you've dared to challenge me as you did. Your two idiot brats chose the path of reincarnation through their bloodlines, while you, Hagoromo, have decided to escape my grasp through the chakra you've gifted to humanity. Clever of all of you, but you've only staved off my wrath until I've gotten a hold of you.
Lady Izanami, please, you have to understand that Hagoromo had tried to plead to her, but wasn't allowed to speak.
That you still hold hope that your sons, or their reincarnations, will finally mature enough to stop their feud. That they will finally bring the world to peace and prosperity it should have achieved eons ago. That your ninshu will finally prosper as it should have been originally, a path to harmony and communication. Izanami asked in a mocking manner, for the one who claimed the title of sage, your ignorance knows no bounds. Hagoromo, you've failed to notice the divide between your sons, created through the disparity in their abilities and talents, and you've not seen how your eldest was consumed by pride and arrogance, festered by your demand in training him and by that worm, spawned by my daughter, and even when you did see it, what did you do? How did Sage of the Six Paths choose to face the imminent threat to his ways and peace? You chose to step aside and let your sons battle it out, giving your youngest the power to match his elder brother. What an ingenious way to destroy all you've worked for. I meant only for Ashura to stop Indra, not destroy what was built by me and my followers. Hagoromo defended himself. I meant for them to stop, to realize that power and brutality was not the way to achieve peace. They needed to understand it themselves. There were far less destructive and more profound ways to bring your wisdom upon them, but you chose to stand aside like a coward, Parvati said to Hagoromo, before taking a look at Ashura and Indra. Your indecisiveness had cost the world hundreds of thousands of lives and put into a loop that it needs to escape from. And without us, there is nothing that can break that cycle, Parvati. Without us there is nothing that can now stand in the way of Kagaya returning, and even now, there are forces on the move, determined to see her reborn. Without Indra and Ashura, without their reincarnations, there is nothing to stop her from coming back. Hagoromo shouted at them. That is where you are wrong, brother, Shiva told him. Mother's seal may be weakened now, allowing her the window of escape, and it is true that the reincarnations of your sons can have the potential to stop her. However, that doesn't mean that they hold the chance of changing the world in the way it needs to change. I can perceive that few timelines contain the world that exists after them, fewer even where the world is in some state of peace, but I see far too many visions where this shinobi world is rocked with strife and war unseen before. Yet the possibility for the better world remains. Shiva, isn't this enough of a reason to let us go? I am certain that with hope and proper guidance, they will do what you wish. Shiva, Hagoromo tried to convince his brother, but found him unconvinced. I've held my hand for eons, Hagoromo, relying on this hope and belief in the better future. And despite how countless times I saw your sons' reincarnations wreak havoc upon the world in their wars, I still stayed my hand, Shiva admitted to him, but after I saw the only vestige of harmony, peace, prosperity and alternative of Sakai, my people and children, the Uzumaki, being destroyed by the system that they had created, I realized that they will not change the world, and even if they do, it will be at the expense of millions, possibly billions of lives being grinded to dust in their war grinder. I am sick and tired of waiting, so I'll do what they should have done, and as for our mother, Hagoromo, you can rest easy knowing that she and her lackeys will be greeted by someone very capable of stopping them. My son will be there, and he will do what needs to be done, whatever it may to require. Now, Izanami, do what you must. With pleasure, Izanami said, as her eyes glowed for a second. Shiva released his nephews, letting them fall to the floor. And the moment they did, a black chains opened up underneath them, with tendrils shooting out of there and grabbing the three by their limbs. Indra and Ashura struggled and tried to release themselves, but were unable to escape the manifestation of Izanami's power where she was at her strongest. Not Kagaya or even Izanagi would be able to break free from the hold of those things. Hagoromo didn't struggle, simply bowing his head in shame and accepting his fate, daring not to face his brother and grandmother. Shiva turned his head to Izanami and simply nodded to her, letting her know that he has had enough of this charade. Without any words, the three were pulled down into the abyss, before the hole was closed up, leaving no trace of them in Yomi other world. Izanami let out a sigh, before stepping closer to her grandson and his wife. With a gesture of her hand, she opened up a portal out of Yomi. Now, shall we be off? Time is running short, and if we do not hurry, we may miss our chance to gain a new member of our family, Izanami said, as they stepped through the portal. Sakai, Konoha's hospital. Time froze for all of world, as three celestial beings appeared in the hospital, stepping out of the portal and into the realm of mortals, frozen in place and unable to perceive the presence of gods. Humans around them were unable to witness Parvati, Izanami and Shiva appearing right front of Naruto, where he was visited by Tomo and Amagi, with the former frozen and unable to perceive them, but the latter. How curious, Izanami said in an amused tone, as she saw Amagi rise up from her seat, shock present on her face and trembling out of sheer fear and being in the presence of three gods at the same time. Calm yourself, servant of Inari, we are not here to harm this little one or you. L Lady Izanami, L Lord Shiva, Lady Parvati, what is it that why you seek in S Sakai? Amagi barely had managed to say. We seek to do as needed for this child, and to give this world a better future. It is not our intent to harm anyone here, Parvati said softly, before turning her head to Naruto. It is our decision and desire to give this child what it deserves and gain what we lost. Family. Family, Amagi asked again, but she didn't receive any answer, as the three deities moved to Naruto and focused their attention upon him. Such a beautiful child, he looks just like our Skanda, when he was the very same age. Parvati couldn't keep a smile off, before reaching with her hand to the child's cheek, caressing it. Same hair and shape of face, though these white hair do make him distinct, like light of sun creeping in from the red leaves. Fault of my Shinigami, but I think they look rather unique with him. Make him stand out and memorable, which is something I would want in my grandson. Izanami noted with a smile, I suspect that he will be a magnet for women all around him, and if hell grow up to be even half as dashing and daring as your Skanda, then there is little doubt that women will flock to him without any regards, and hell probably be all too happy about it. Izanami sent a sly smirk towards Parvati, reminding her about her younger son's attitude, making Parvati blush a little at the mention. He simply inherited a bit more from one of my more extreme sides, Parvati stated with some reservation, before she turned towards her husband, who looked intently towards the child, Shiva. Looking at this child, Shiva was able to see into the possible outcomes of all that was to come from this event. He could clearly predict and see how this child will grow up, what will be his fate in this world, and what he saw had made Shiva think about his decision carefully. To place such powers upon a child, to grant him even a small part of them to him, it would be as risky as dangerous and unpredictable. In many futures he saw this child lynched and killed by the very people of this village, just because he didn't fit it. In others he saw the father of this child, so-called Yellow Flash, ordering his execution, seeing him as a threat to the false prophecy. In others, the resentment and anger led this child to the dark path of destroying the shinobi world, but also creating something far worse than before. Shiva knew that he couldn't allow those kinds of future to come to fruition. But where he saw darkness, he also saw just as much light. And in other futures, Shiva perceived that Naruto will be able to do what he wished of him. He saw him as a warrior, scholar, sage and ruler, separately and combined, changing the world through hope, actions and sheer will. He perceived many futures where Sakai thrived and harmony was achieved, and where Naruto rose to join him and other deities, and there just as many where he remained loyal to only his world. Shiva felt hope and harmony in those futures, where Naruto was able to forge his own path and come to the future where the world was saved. But along with the good and the bad ones, Shiva perceived just many futures, where they intertwined and mixed in together, creating future harmonies and peace that were won or lost through bloodshed and suffering of many, including Naruto, and these gray areas, where his future son would suffer and struggle were also the most likely to happen. And if Shiva knew something about human nature, then it was how toil and suffering can lead others down the path of destruction and pain, becoming less human and more what mortals perceived as godlike. No, he needed for Naruto to retain his humanity and human nature, morals and ideals, but he couldn't enforce them upon him. The child will find himself alone, without anyone to turn to in the future. And then there will have to be those that will need to support him. People that will teach him the value of humanity, those that may open him a path towards life and peace. And Shiva could clearly see that Namikaze and Kushina weren't the people for it. Their futures were intertwined with that of the others, where they were led and manipulated by others and made believe in following a supposedly already set route, which greatly limited their possible outcomes for the future. No, Naruto will need someone who will teach him the value to free choice and living by your own code. He will need a mentor and a parent in one face, perhaps even several at once. Shiva turned his gaze away from Naruto, and then suddenly looked at the woman that was nearest to Naruto. Observing her with his eyes, Izanami and Parvati could clearly see that something was going on with Shiva, and they suspected that it was connected to his powers of ultimate perception. After Shiva was done looking at the woman, he looked at still shocked Amagi, before speaking to her in a calming tone. Amagi no Tenko. Shiva's voice immediately made Amagi calm down and stop shaking. May I ask you a favor, servant of Inari? Of course, Lord Shiva. Amagi bowed before him out of respect, before raising her head. I shall do whatever you may require of me, as long as that doesn't interfere with my duties to Inari. I wouldn't ask you of that, Shiva assured her, before turning to the child. This child, he will be blessed by us three, but that will not secure him a safe and happy life. There shall be great toil and suffering awaiting him the future. Emotional and physical, and much of it will come from the people of this village. He will be seen as something to be resented and feared. Treated as someone who deserves not his station in life and status. Looked down upon by those that are supposed to be his closest people. He shall perceive things that people disregard as lies and myth. A world in its true colors that men do not see anymore. They will see him as a fool, when in truth he shall be enlightened beyond their abilities. Such things will break any man and even God at their core. So I ask you, Amagi no Tenko, that you and your friend Tomo Uchiha, that you protect him when the time comes and you see him in peril of slipping out of his humanity, become what we will not be able to be for him, and what his birth parents won't be for him. This is what I ask of you, Amagi no Tenko. Will you do this for us and for this child? I will, Lord Shiva. Amagi bowed to him, with Shiva smiling to her. You have my thanks, for you friend here. Tell her that the connection she has with this child isn't her a way for her to dull the pain of her loss. It is what makes her human and that she should let herself be human, Shiva told Amagi, and tell her, that she had no hand in death of her child. A hand of malice, jealousy and envy took the child's life, one that still lives. Tell her not to seek revenge or vengeance, but to give this child what it will need, for with him lies her peace. Amagi nodded to them, as Shiva turned back to Naruto. All three deities exchanged looks with each other, before nodding. Reaching consensus among themselves, before they each placed a hand upon Naruto's body. Shiva's hand landed upon Naruto's head, with Parvati placing her hand on Naruto's stomach. While Izanami placed her hand upon Naruto's heart, reaching with her powers for the brand and removing from the boy. Once it was done, Amagi felt how all three deities had gifted Naruto with part of their godhood, sensing through the natural chakra how Naruto was being healed and changed at the same time. His soul, fractured and weak, was remade by Izanami personally, with Shiva and Parvati granting their essences for the child. Goddess of creation and death added something from herself for the child.
A small additional gift to her already generous present. She warded him from ever being claimed by Shinigami or creatures similar to those. While the boy would still remain mortal, he was safe if a being serving to the balance through deliverance of death will take notice of him and tries taking his life. Additional to his soul in this ward, Izanami gifted Naruto by changing his body, to make him stronger in the future and to fully utilize the powers that were passed down to him as an Uzumaki. He held now potential to become the new progenitor of Uzumaki people, stronger than ever, with all the gifts of their bloodline from Izanami. Parvati too was generous towards her adopted son, and gifted him with presents from all three aspects of her being. From her side as goddess of fertility, love and beauty. She blessed her son with beauty both outer and inner. which will be seen by others that wish to pursue his affections. Along with ensuring that Naruto will not be without a spouse or spouses in the future. Parvati held no resentment towards polygamy, and if her child wished, then he was free to love more than one person, as Durga, goddess of war and protector against evil, goddess gifted Naruto with instinctual understanding of arms and arts of battle. For she sensed that he shall need this in the years to come. With this gift, he shall be able to master any and all weapons that come into his possession. With enough determination, will and desire, and finally, as Kali, goddess of destruction and destroyer of evil, goddess granted Naruto the strength in chakra and ability to use an even more powerful and dangerous energy key. To access it, Naruto will need to be open to all of world around him, but Parvati felt that he shall be able to access it, and when he does, even gods will be forced to reckon with him. Shiva's gift was the final one that was bestowed upon Naruto. And it was something that he himself had spent countless years developing sight and understanding of the world around him. With this, Naruto shall be able to perceive the world just like Shiva does, and will also be able to connect with it on the level that has long been lost to humanity. He will perceive the world in such way that not even those that hide will be able to do so. Such as yokai and spirits, and Naruto will be able to see and commune with them. And with understanding of things, he shall be able to see past their appearances and perceive their true natures, just as Shiva learned to do. With this, Naruto will be able to understand this world at a far deeper and greater level than other mortals and sages, and with this, Shiva hoped that Naruto will be able to perceive the world in a way that humans have not seen in ages, and will recognize what had happened to it. With these gifts, and their essences mixing with Naruto's soul, they were now done, and Shiva allowed himself to let out a small smile, before he spoke. "Be well, my son, we will meet again when the time comes," Shiva told Naruto, letting him hear it. Before him, Parvati and Izanami departed from the realm. The moment they had done so, time resumed their own course and all once more began to move. Not noticing a thing that had transpired just now, only Amagi remained aware of what had happened and remembered the task that Shiva had given to her. Though she was loyal to Inari, she couldn't refuse the request of one like Shiva, and Amagi didn't have it in her to say no to him. She shall do whatever it took to protect the child and give him whatever he shall need. Gods may be unable to interfere so directly with the affairs of the mortals because of their task to maintain the balance of creation and let mortals develop on their own, but to see Shiva himself do so, there were going to be great changes in the world from this moment on. Tomo blinked, shaking off a strange feeling that something had just happened and she wasn't able to perceive it. She quickly forgotten about it, when she suddenly felt movement underneath her hand that was holding Naruto's small arm. She didn't notice at first, but then she saw something that shocked her to no end before her. On the bed laid Naruto, his eyes open and moving, looking every bit as any child should. The only thing that had thrown her off a little was the fact that his eyes were new, completely different. From the sky blue they were now the color of golden light. Shock was written all over her face, as she wasn't able to fully comprehend how this could have happened. Just 1 second ago, this child was at death's doorsteps, and now. Tomo's shock was instantly gone when she heard Naruto first start to whine, and then when he started to cry out loud. Without a moment's notice and without even understanding it herself, Tomo disconnected Naruto from the monitors around him and gently laid him in her own arms, rocking him and calming him down. There, little one, no need to cry. Nobody will hurt you or scare you. Else it'll make them very sorry about doing it." Tomo saw how Naruto was calming down in her arms, letting out a calmed sigh, before looking at her smiling friend. "Amagi, did you?" "I've done nothing with the child, Tomo, of that I can assure you," Amagi quickly told her. "Then how is this even possible? Just a moment ago he was." Tomo couldn't wrap her head around it, until Amagi put her hand on her friend's shoulder and spoke calmly. "I will explain everything to you once we are away from the prying eyes. Right now, I believe it would best if we've informed Hokage of the fact that he has left his youngest in the hospital, when he is in perfectly good health," Amagi stated to her friend, with Tomo nodding to her. "You just sit here and I'll make sure that the message is delivered," and with that, Amagi left the room, leaving Tomo with Naruto in the room. It didn't take the priestess all that long to have the message about his son delivered to Hokage and his wife. For Amagi returned already in tow with Kushina, Minato and Tsunade, all three of whom were left stunned and speechless at what they saw. Before them stood Tomo, gently rocking completely healthy and healed up Naruto, a small smile dancing on her lips as she hummed a soft tune for him. This was definitely not what they wished to see, and Kushina was the first one to speak up, as her temper flared up akin to volcano. "You wretched wench, give me my son back," Kushina instantly screamed, scaring Naruto, but Tomo did comply and handed Naruto over to Kushina, and the moment she grabbed a hold of him, child began to cry even more than before. Naruto, my little maelstrom, your mommy is here and this horrid child killer won't ever touch you ever again. Tomo felt a pang of pain in her heart at those words, reminding her of the death of her son. This is impossible. The kid was dying. I need to run tests and see if he is fine. Tsunade, stunned and shocked, immediately went to Naruto, while Tomo decided to leave the room. Tomo, she suddenly heard Minato call her. I wanted to say, thank you, for stopping Kyuubi. I simply did my duty. Lord Hokage, I believe with this, I've earned my right for retirement. Tomo asked, but her tone indicated that it wasn't a question at heart. Why yes, I've already signed all the needed papers, you are now officially discharged from shinobi forces, Tomo, Minato told her, and, I also want you to know that. Good, thank you for that, come, Amagi, let's not ruin this precious moment for these people. Amagi nodded to her and left with her friend. Tomo, about what Kushina told you, do I look like I care about what that red-haired banshee spouts from her big mouth? She could have at least had the decency, or common sense for that matter, not to shout with Naruto there, and did you see just how roughly she grabbed him and rocked him? Tomo said with clear anger in her voice, I swear, she didn't grow up even a single bit since she was kid, and now she is the one with 3 kids of her own. Maybe, or maybe she has 2 instead of 3. Amagi suggested with an innocent look to Tomo, who didn't appreciate the implication. Don't give me such a cold look. I saw just how sweet you two looked with each other, and he clearly prefers you to her. I simply knew how to calm children properly, unlike that red-haired ogress, Tomo told Amagi, before letting out a sigh, like I would ever dare to hurt a child. You never did, and there is no blame of yours in the death of Masamune. Amagi told Tomo with full seriousness, someone who was jealous and angry at you had decided to take him from you, and that wretch still walks the earth. How would you know of it, Amagi? Maybe, because a god had told me. Amagi said with a small smile to her friend, with Tomo simply letting out a tired sigh, not able to make heads or tails of what her friend meant. All she knew right now is that she was glad that Naruto was healed up and that he was going to be returning home. She could only hope that they would later meet under far better circumstances. If only she knew what future had in store for her. Mom, Dad, did you see that? Natsu cried out of excitement, as he released his chakra. Ha! Take that, Narumi. I am now one step closer to beating you the title of next Hokage. Laugh all you want, but you won't even be able to match me, 'cause I unlocked mine earlier, so I've got a head start. Narumi smirked at him, making Natsu angry and irritated, before their parents had intervened. Now, don't start fighting, children, you should be very proud of yourselves, since nobody gets to unlock their chakra so fast and with so little trouble, Minato said with a proud smile on his face, with Kushina matching his joy. Just 10 days into the training, and you've already tapped into your chakra. I swear, by the time you become Genins, you two will be unstoppable if you continue on like this. Of course they'll be unstoppable, when they have 2 of Konoha's best shinobi and 2 Sanins helping them out, Minato. Kushina said with big smile. Oh, you are making me so proud of you, to think that you've managed to unlock your chakra so fast. Not even Makoto's genius son couldn't do it until he was 6, and I've got 2 of you beating him to a year. You must be prodigies, Natsu, Narumi. Kushina grabbed both of her kids and hugged them tightly, with Minato joining in. This was the scene of happy celebration of children's success that was observed by one child that seemed left out in the family. That child, Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki, currently observed everything that transpired through the window on the 2nd floor of estate. His golden eyes looking at what was going on in the garden with a barely hidden hurt, covered by the bangs of red like blood hair, with streaks of white in them. He stood out from his brother and sister, with Natsu having blue eyes and red hair, while Narumi got the blonde hair and violet eyes, and it wasn't just because of his looks, but also because of the attitude he had, which was vastly different from his siblings. Where Natsu and Narumi were seemingly obsessed and overly excited with everything that revolved around being a shinobi, Naruto seemed to take it with far less excitement and enthusiasm. While he was somewhat interested in being a shinobi, if only to gain some manner of attention from his parents, but he didn't see being a shinobi as everything there was to life and world. If anything, Naruto felt it to be somewhat restraining to him and not fully for him. Along with that, Naruto was different in how he preferred to spend his time, as he liked to read books on all sorts of stuff, like legends, folklore, myths, but also more complex stuff, like math, science and so. Where he was far more comfortable with spending time with a book. His siblings hung out with their friends, of which they had a dime and a dozen. If not several dozens, and since Naruto didn't talk much to other people, he didn't have friends among the villagers, and given some other factors, it was no wonder that he was seen as a strange child, such as when their parents had asked on their 5th birthday whom they wanted to be. Natsu and Narumi instantly said that they wanted to be shinobi and future Hokage, with Minato, Kushina and everyone else praising them and smiling, with Naruto thinking that his siblings simply gave expected answers. But when he was asked, Naruto didn't answer with shinobi. Instead, his answer was that he didn't know whom he wanted to be. But he did say that he would like to help those in need of it. His parents and everyone else at the party interpreted as being a hero and shinobi of Konoha and its people. With everyone saying that it was a nice dream, but it was then that Naruto said that he didn't mean Konoha. He wanted to help people just because they were people. Even if they were from other villages, whether he was or wasn't a shinobi. When his mother asked why did he want to help everyone and not just Konoha, Naruto answered that it would be wrong to ignore everyone else. His siblings laughed at him, calling him a fool and saying that the only way he could be a hero was if he were to be shinobi of Konoha, with other children quickly picking up on him by calling him a fool. Grown-ups, along with his parents, decided to dismiss this drivel as child's dream and nothing more, focusing back on his siblings. While most had probably even forgotten about it already. But Naruto didn't, as he was actually serious with he said. Or at least as serious as a child of his age could be. It did hurt that he was dismissed by everyone for his words and that other children called him a fool. But Naruto decided not to give it much of a thought. Just because he was called a fool didn't make him one in his own opinion. And even when village in its majority soon started to refer to Naruto as Namikaze's fool, he simply didn't bother with it. People have always been giving him weird looks and dismissed him in favor of his siblings, who were nearly worshipped as heroes of Konoha for holding in them the 9-tailed fox. Natsu and Narumi were used to such attention and reverence, being fed it since they were born, and it showed in their attitudes. Personally, Naruto thought it was strange that people praised his brother and sister for doing seemingly nothing. They didn't fight the Kyuubi, or do the sealing or even serve as seals itself. They are simply vessels for its power. Not the ones who hold those vessels closed for Fox, and they are not the ones who sealed the Fox, so why worship them? This just puzzled Naruto as to why would people revered his siblings so much. If anyone was worth the respect, then it would be those that had given their lives for the village and in saving people from the Fox, but people seemingly forgot about these heroes, or didn't want to mention them. And as for Naruto personally, then the opinion of people was completely different. As he seemed to be an odd boy to them all, including his parents. Which wasn't helped by the fact of Naruto possessing eyes with the golden color. Something that his mother and father had stated should have been impossible. Since they had different colors of eyes, he was their son, there was no doubt about, as Naruto had facial characteristics of his mother and father mixed into him, but the eyes, they were something completely foreign, and that wasn't the end of it yet. From what Naruto understood, he wasn't supposed to have survived when he was just born, and yet, he was healed from whatever that was killing him, and it was also the very day that he also gained his eyes. This had quickly created plenty of rumors, ranging from Naruto being a completely different child that his parents took in to stop feeling hurt, to Naruto actually being possessed by the fox's soul, with his eyes being the same as Kyuubi's. His parents didn't actually believe any of it, but because they never really addressed all the rumors and speculations, they never stopped or died out. This served a foul service to Naruto, creating him a rather bad reputation around the village, with dozens of stories being mixed into it about him being a cursed child, possessed by a fox, or not even a real Namikaze. Of course, nobody had even dared to mention those rumors to Minato or Kushina. Fearing for their lives and health, as they all knew about Kushina's explosive temper and preference to violence over talking. Because of this, people always gave Naruto cold glares or preferred to ignore him outright, especially when his siblings were around. But generally, people didn't do anything bad to him or harmed him in any way, so when the rumors spread of Naruto being a fool, people took to this like fish takes to water, and he quickly earned himself a new nickname, Fool of Konoha. Another curious thing that Naruto also had going for him was the fact that he could always understand and tell what people really felt when they spoke to him or were near him. It was like he could read their minds and tell when they were telling a lie or being truthful. He could also understand and sense what people felt towards him, which was something, as Naruto found out some time ago, was something that only he could do. For an example, he could tell how exactly people felt towards him when he was around him, and in most times it was either indifferent, some kind of disappointment, or just plain hatred or malice for some reason. Same went for his parents and siblings, and he could tell what people felt about others. If he wanted, this was one of the reasons why he never felt as close with his siblings and parents as they were with each other. He could sense that his parents loved him, or at least cared for him. But when compared to his siblings, their love and adoration of them was far stronger. It was like comparing a local normal house to a clan's estate with its grounds. Naruto also sensed disappointment from his parents every time they looked at him, as if he wasn't as good as they had wanted him to be. He knew he was different from them and his siblings, but just because of that, why should they feel like he is failing them? While Naruto had long learned to keep his calm and not to dwell on bad things, that was one of the few things that kept distressing him. Naruto didn't understand why people were so cold towards him and why they thought that he wasn't his parents' kid. True, his eyes were different, but he did read in a book that it could have been because he took after his grandparents. It was possible, so why didn't people think about it? Why think the worst possible thing to be the right one? Honestly, people of Konoha and Shinobi vexed Naruto with their ignorant attitude. His parents also surprised Naruto in a few ways, such as being completely ignorant towards rumors spreading around about their son, or in the fact that they gave far more attention towards his siblings instead of him and his little sister Mito, with whom he was currently sitting in the room. Mito was born near 3 years ago in September, making her 2 years. With looks that nearly matched those of Naruto, as she sported bright crimson hair and even resembled Naruto facially. While her eyes were of violet color, same as Kushina. Out of all his siblings, Naruto could honestly say that he was closest with his little sister. As, when there wasn't anyone staying with her, she was always in Naruto's company. He enjoyed his little sister's company and she always was able to make him stop thinking about things and just smile, with Naruto always making his little sister smile and laugh whenever he could. Like with others, Naruto was capable of sensing emotions of his little sister, and sensing and seeing her joy was more than enough to lift his spirits and forget about all the bad stuff. Natsu and Narumi didn't seem to have the same effect on Mito, as their antics and hyperbolic personalities seemed to scare Mito, making her cry, and when that happened, Naruto was almost always able to make her stop and smile again. Because of that, along with their many friends and admirers, they didn't like to spend much time with her and thought it to be boring and a bother. Good thing that his parents didn't think like they did and paid Mito enough attention. But ever since they've started training his siblings, they've become somewhat distant from Mito, with his mother even deciding to employ a babysitter for Mito. When she was training Natsu and Narumi, for some reason that Naruto didn't yet understand, the fact that his mother would pay someone to look after Mito instead of doing it herself, made the youngest of triplets feel angry at his mother, and it was amplified even further when he discovered that the woman in question wasn't even all that interested in looking after Mito, as she was in putting on a show of doing it, so as to earn herself appreciation of Minato and Kushina. Naruto's musings about things and his observation of his family were interrupted, when he sensed how a small palm of his sister touched his leg. He instantly turned away from the window and looked down at Mito, flashing her a wide smile, with Mito answering with giggles and same, picking her up with some difficulty. Naruto sat with her on the bed and spoke up. So Mito, what story would you like to hear today? A tale of gallant ninja, or how about a tale of Fox Princess Shizuka and Big Bad Oni Otakemaru? Naruto asked her, as this was their favorite pastime. Foxy, Foxy, Mito enthusiastically said, with Naruto smiling and beginning his tale. Alright, the public made its decision, Naruto said, as he sat her more comfortably. Once upon a time, in mountains far, far away stood a very big and very pretty palace. Bigger than our home? Mito asked, with Naruto nodding to her. Yes, it was as big as the Hokage mountain and in there lived a very beautiful Princess Shizuka. People from all over the world, lords and samurai, shinobi and merchants, would seek her out and to ask for her hand in marriage, but she would turn everyone away, Naruto continued. But why? Shizuka didn't want to become someone's wife just yet, and because they didn't see the real her and only saw what they wanted to see, Naruto said in somewhat riddled fashion, because she wasn't just a princess, but she was also a kitsune and a kami that people of local towns and villages prayed to. While she was in her palace and people prayed to her, she would provide people with good harvests and protect them and their crops from rains. Ah, so she was like Papa, Mito said with giggles. Did she also have shinobi helping her? No, not shinobi, but kitsune just like her, only younger and not as powerful. You see, Mito, Shizuka was a tenko, a kitsune that lived over 1,000 years and grew all 9 tails. With all 9 tails, a kitsune could become a tenko, a very, very important kitsune and a local kami. Naruto explained to her, like Hokage, she would protect and look after people, but also make sure that they had all they required, as long as people respected her and didn't try to hurt nature or hunt foxes. Why would people hurt foxes? Mito asked in a saddened voice. Everyone has their own reason, Mito, but you shouldn't hurt foxes if they do not do harm to you. Foxes are servants of goddess Inari, a very important goddess that people pray to for harvests, money and so on. If you respect the nature and sometimes feed foxes that come near your farm or house, then Inari will bless you, but if you hurt it, then Inari will send her kitsune after you and all those that hurt her foxes. And when that happened, those evildoers would start to have all kinds of bad things to happen to them, from tripping on flat ground to having all of their food being eaten by kitsune and worse. Naruto continued. Now, Shizuka herself it was at that point when the door into his room opened up and in stepped the babysitter that his mother had hired, one Mebuki Haruno. Ah, there you are, little rascal. Why did you take her out of her crib, you fool of child? Mebuki practically screeched at Naruto, who flinched at how she spoke, and keeping himself from scowling at the woman, reading her like a book. Mito was lonely, and I decided. Naruto spoken up, but wasn't allowed to continue, as Mebuki stormed towards him and Mito. She pushed him aside and grabbed Mito, before stepping out of the room, with Mito protesting. I don't want to see you passing on whatever foolishness you have onto Mito, you hear me? If I see her with you again the next time I am here, I'll report to your parents and they'll deal with you. Do you understand me, fool? She threatened to Naruto, with him nodding to her. Good, now make yourself useful and don't show yourself around me and Mito. With that, she stepped out of the room, banging the door loudly on her way back, leaving Naruto alone in his room. Or so it would seem for most, but not to Naruto, because for as long as he could remember, he was always able to see things that normal people couldn't. Like, for instance, Naruto turned to his right, his gaze looking at the two other beings that were in his room. Closest to him sat a fox with dark brown fur and red eyes, with red markings on her body, and 5 fluffy long tails waving behind her. She emitted an unnatural fiery glow from herself, with only Naruto being able to see it. He could clearly see how she was angry and he couldn't blame her, since he too didn't like Mebuki one bit. She seemed to care only about herself and didn't care much about Mito, at least not as much as Naruto would have wanted. The second occupant also looked like a fox, but unlike the first one, she had only one tail, which was longer than her body. She also had white fur, with the tip of her long tail being colored red. Her eyes were yellow and she had 4 horns on her head, pointed backwards. She emitted a green glow from her body and seemed floating in the air, also showing with her violently swinging tail that she was displeased with Mebuki. These were what Naruto had been the subject that Naruto was telling about to Mito. They were kitsune, with the 6-tailed one being called Akagi, while the white-horned kitsune called herself Izuna. And Naruto was the only who could see, touch and talk to them, with everyone around him and in the village not capable of even perceiving them or other creatures like them, which were called yokai. These yokai are capable of existing outside of human perception, with nobody, not even censors, Hyuga or Uchiha being able to see or even sense their presence, and it was much to the benefit of the yokai, since there were a great many of them living in Konoha and its local areas, varying from small forest spurts Kodama and ending with kitsune. Naruto literally saw all kinds of yokai when he was out on the streets, creatures passing by humans that would make anyone stop and run for the hills, yet none could see them, save for Naruto. This, along with his empathy thing, was also one of the strange things that Naruto could do. And a few years back, he had tried to tell his parents all about it, but they dismissed it all as a child's fantasies. He tried to prove them wrong, but all did was earn him laughs from his parents, mocking from his siblings and later on a worsened reputation among the villagers. Now that Naruto thought about it, he could potentially understand why people were so distrustful and cold towards him, as well as prone to see him as a fool or an odd child. Didn't mean that it wasn't hurtful, but still. Back to the kitsune in front of Naruto, due to his abilities. Naruto was always aware of someone watching over him since he was the same age as Mito. Sometimes he would even see Akagi and some other kitsune watching over him from the window or right outside his crib, looking after him when he was left alone. Most, or rather always, it was Akagi that was near him, and she was the first one of the kitsune and yokai in general to speak to him. She taught him all he now knew about yokai, kitsune, and the world as it was in reality and all other things. She told him that she and other kitsune were instructed to watch over him by a tenko that resided in this village. When Naruto had asked who that tenko was, Akagi didn't answer, but she did tell him that they will meet when the time is right. Naruto trusted Akagi and other kitsune, because he could clearly see and sense that they didn't wish him any harm and genuinely were concerned about him. Akagi in particular was very protective towards Naruto, claiming that to her, he was the most important person in the world. With Naruto sensing devotion, care, love and something that he couldn't quite yet figure out, Naruto just accepted this all as a fact, and with that, he had gained himself his first real friend. Izuna was one of the kitsune that was tasked with looking after him, but she seemed to have long taken a liking to Mito, which didn't bother Naruto all that much. If anything, he was relieved that his sister had someone looking after her when he wasn't around. Letting out a sigh, Naruto stood up from his seat and fixed his appearance a bit. Wretched woman. What right she has to shove you like this? Naruto, darling, Just say the word, and I'll make her beg for you to forgive her. Akagi offered him with a very menacing giggle followed afterwards. I wish, but then she would probably say that it was me who had done it to her, and I think my parents would believe her, or at least my mom would. She does still think that Mebuki is her best friend, alongside Makoto. Naruto sighed again, before turning to Izuna. Izuna, could you look out for Mito? I doubt I'll be able to see her again before the dinner. I'll not let her out of my sight. With that said, Izuna flew away from the room, passing right through the door, as if she were a ghost. Then what is your plan for today? Perhaps we could go to library and finish up that book you've started. Akagi suggested, tilting her head to her left a little bit. Maybe, but I don't feel like reading anymore. Let's just go for a stroll. Maybe some fresh air will help me up, Naruto said and went out of his room, with Akagi following closely. Sneaking out of the room and house was easy, as Mebuki wasn't really paying attention to him. And was strangely enough, muttering something about being denied what was her rightfully and so on. Whatever she was on about, Naruto didn't care about it and simply left the house with Akagi, but not before waving his sister and cheering her up with a funny face. Once outside, Naruto began to walk down the streets, with Akagi deciding to cast a spell over Naruto, which would make him seemingly invisible towards others. As Naruto had learned, yokai aren't just for show and they do have their own tricks up their sleeves, which they can utilize. This was what people would call magic. But for them it was just as natural as any other jutsu. And this simple spell was one of the easier ones to learn. According to Akagi, but very effective, as not even sensors would be able to detect you while you were under that cloak, allowing you to move and speak freely. You do have to be careful not to bump or touch anyone outside the cloak, or they'll immediately see you. Akagi knew that Naruto, while he didn't show it, felt upset and bad when people projected their bad emotions on him, so she took to habit to cast this cloak over him when they were out on the walk together. This was just one of many ways in which Akagi took care of Naruto, as she had done for almost all of his life that she guarded him. Another way was through being a confidant of his and letting him spill out his feelings, just as she felt he needed to do right now. Naruto, are you alright? Akagi spoke to him, as they moved along the street, avoiding passing by people and yokai. I've noticed that you've been brooding a bit more than usual. While I do not mind observing you do that out of aesthetic pleasure, it does make me worry about you. Is this about your parents starting to train Natsu and Narumi? Not really, at least not completely about training them, Naruto said in an unsure tone. It's just, I just don't get it really. You do not understand the reason for them training your brother and sister so early and not doing the same with you? Akagi asked him, with Naruto nodding to her. I may not know your parents all too well, but from what I've observed over years, I've come to understand that your parents are biased towards you and your siblings, though in different ways. Care to elaborate on that? Naruto asked her. Your mother and father have always been like this. Maybe because of your siblings containing the nine-tailed monster inside of them, or maybe because the two are so apparent in their personalities. I can't say with full certainty. Akagi spoke up, but what I can say is that Kushina and Minato have much higher hopes for them than they do for you, and that the no small part of their bias comes from the influence of your godparents and other important people. Naruto corked up his eyebrow at the mention of the two Sanins, before returning it to normal, as the mention of the two didn't leave a good taste in his mouth. Tsunade and Jiraiya were often guests in their house, with the latter being there almost every other day when he was in the village and not doing whatever he did, and whenever they were in the house, the two would always focus their attention on Natsu and Narumi, with Tsunade boasting how she will train Narumi to be her next successor, while Jiraiya was prattling on about how Natsu will be the next great sage after him. All the while, whenever Naruto had tried to get their attention, he would get far different reactions from them. Jiraiya would always try to wave him off, with Naruto sensing that the man wasn't just interested in Naruto, but felt that even talking to him was a waste of time. Naruto also sensed no small amount of disappointment from Jiraiya for seemingly no reason whatsoever, which when combined with earlier felt emotions had left Naruto with a negative impression of Jiraiya. As for Tsunade, she seemed weird to Naruto, because whenever he approached her, he would see her lash out verbally at him, saying that she didn't want anything to do with him. But while he did sense anger from her, he also sensed regret, sadness and a feeling of loss. It was as if Naruto's presence was far too painful for Tsunade to endure. This was something that Naruto couldn't fully comprehend, so he didn't have a fully formed opinion about Tsunade just yet. However, just because of how obnoxious and temperamental she was at times, Naruto could see that she wasn't the type that would get along with him well. And Naruto could totally see the Sanins and other people influencing his parents, because he already knew and understood that they were a little gullible in their trust in others. Just look at Mebuki being placed in charge of taking care of Mito, and that's just one thing. His parents constantly heard praises from others about his brother and sister for no apparent reason, and they took it all without a second thought. And then there are the Sanins. They clearly favored his siblings, and that wasn't even all that hard to notice, but his parents, they just didn't seem to notice it at all. His father and mother felt some kind of special reverence towards the Sanins. Especially towards Jiraiya, since Naruto himself was named after one of the fictional characters that the man wrote. Just out of interest, Naruto read the story himself when he found it in the library. And to be quite honest, that book had left something of two-sided impression. On one hand, he did like the main character and his resolve, but overall, the antagonists and the setting, it all seemed to work almost always in the favor of Hiro, and everything was too white and black. Maybe Naruto's dislike stemmed from the fact of his preference towards other genres of literature or something else, but overall, he didn't like the book and he didn't see why his parents would name him like that. Perhaps they were under a more profound impression from the book and character. Who knows? Yeah, I can see them being influenced by them, but still, why are Natsu and Narumi getting so much spotlight? Naruto asked of Akagi. Because most humans aren't as perceptive as they like to state they are, Akagi replied to Naruto with a knowing tone. Do you know how a cat gets a person's attention? It meows and makes noises, Naruto answered. Are you implying that because Natsu and Narumi are so active and outgoing that they get all the attention from everyone? That would be part of the reason, but not the entire one. No, Akagi said to Naruto. Humans have a certain tendency to be blind towards those that they revere and worship, not fully realizing the whole picture. Let's take for instance your father, Minato Namikaze, the so-called Yellow Flash and a man that had single-handedly ended the war with Iwagakure, as the humans say. Now what was the most deciding battle in the conflict, Naruto? The Battle of Northern Ridge, where a third of Iwa's invasion force was wiped out by him, Naruto answered. Yes, that is correct, but would like to know how did Minato manage to gain victory for Konoha on that day? Akagi asked, with Naruto nodding to her. Well then, the history books might have stated that the battle was won thanks to your father's intervention, but in reality it wasn't all that cut and dry. Iwagakure had been forced into a prolonged engagement before that battle officially took place, when they tried to pass that ridge, since it was defended by members of Clan E, once a numerous and respected clan of this village, but now reduced to just 2 members. Do you know how they've met their end? They've stopped the advance of Iwa's forces and held them back, despite being outnumbered? Naruto asked. Correct, and even I, a kitsune with no particular love for humans, have to give credit where it is due. Those men and women, some 200 shinobi clad in bright red armor, held the line for 4 days straight against an army of over 2,500 shinobi. Outnumbered, with no lines of communication whatsoever and no retreat. They've managed to inflict such casualties, that 3rd Tsuchikage was forced to send reinforcements to keep the offensive going. And by the end of the 4th day, he himself came to the battlefield, where only 11 warriors remained. Akagi continued. Battered, injured, exhausted and weakened to the point where it should have been impossible for them to continue fighting. Yet they still stood their ground. Tsuchikage personally vaporized them with his jutsu. But he then also ordered that all the bodies and armor of the clan, the bodies were buried in a mass grave not far from Ridge, while armor was sent back to village. Only a few days later, when Konoha's reinforcing battalion had reached the ridge, they were met with over 1,000 of Iwa's shinobi, who were also battered, tired and ill-equipped for further offense. Yet the unprepared Konoha shinobi were overwhelmed, and then came your father. So the foundation of that victory and end of the conflict with Iwa was brought thanks to the sacrifice of Clan E. But nobody seems to talk about them. What became of them after the war? Naruto asked. The clan had lost the majority of its members, and when Kurama got out of your mother, it killed practically all the rest of E clansmen, when one of its tails had crushed their estate, where non-combatants were, while warriors were killed in action. Akagi told Naruto. Only one member of the clan survived, a young woman by the name of Naotora, and only because she was on the border duty. When she returned, she found out the fate of her clan and how she was left with nothing. After this, she quit being a shinobi and had adopted a son, called Naomasa, whom she now raises. I see. So what you were implying that the truth of the matter may be deeper and not so obvious to the eye, right? Naruto asked, with Akagi giggling a little. And this is exactly why I adore you, Naruto. You were able to see better, unlike the humans who can't often see past their noses. But you just like to take your time and examine something thoroughly. Ah, when you grow up, I would so very much like to be an object of your examination, Akagi suggestively stated, forgetting about the fact that she spoke with a 5-year-old child. You are like an open book, Akagi, though it is good and I am glad to know you. You don't hold anything back and say what you feel and what you think about, which is better than what most others do. Naruto replied to her. Still, it doesn't exactly answer the question I had in mind. My dear Naruto, to fully answer the question you've imposed upon yourself about your siblings, you would need to learn to read minds of others, if you want the clearest picture possible. All I can say is that you should always try and comprehend the reasons behind everyone's actions and thoughts. Akaji told Naruto, who seemed in somewhat thinking process. I know that you may be wondering if you were to become more like your siblings. Then would your parents pay more attention to you, and all I have to say to this is that you would be making a real fool out of yourself. Despite what humans may say about you, Naruto, you are far from a fool they claim you to be. You are idealistic, true, a little naive, certainly, but you are also someone who thinks about things and not accepts them at face value. You don't just follow the crowd's instinct, you stand out, and that is good, you are unique, and that is what is important. Thanks, Akaji, Naruto said with a small smile, before releasing a smile. At least you and other kitsunes seem to acknowledge me for who I am and not judge upon it or something, unlike my parents. Well, if they don't care about their son when he doesn't meet their expectations, then how about you think of it in this way? Why should you care about them when they don't meet your expectations? Akaji suggested, with Naruto turning his head to the fox. They don't seem to care about you or your interests, then why should you strive to impress them? They are my parents, Akaji, my mother and father. Isn't it natural for children to want their parents to be proud of them? Naruto asked of her. Besides, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be born in this world. That may be so, but I mean that while it may seem important. Why you don't think about why is it so important, Akaji suggested to Naruto. Before letting out an audible sigh, Naruto, family isn't just blood relations and membership in some clan. Take it after someone who lived for over 50 decades. Family are people that care for you and who accept you for not what you are trying to be for them, but simply because of who you are, with all your flaws and peculiarities. To try and change for someone else's sake isn't a worthwhile goal. Believe me, I accept you, and to me, you are already a family. Humans may have a different understanding of family, but to me, this is how it is. Then I am glad to be a part of your family, Akaji. Thank you. Naruto seemed more cheered up now. I'll think about what you said, Naruto said, before the two had stopped, finding themselves in front of a certain forested area on the outskirts of Konoha. The Forest of Death was located quite some ways away from the village proper, and was surrounded by fence and closed gates, as well as warning signs so as to keep civilians and most shinobi out of that area. It was designated as one of the most dangerous places to be not just in Konoha, but in all of Land of Fire, because of the dangerous and strange wildlife, man-eating plants and all other things that made that forest so dangerous. That's not to mention the fact that despite encompassing only 10 kilometers in radius, it was not uncommon for people to get lost in the forest and not be seen again. Trees, plantation and so forth were bigger and stronger than normal counterparts, and because of that no untrained shinobi or genin would go there without a purpose. This had also made this forest into an ideal place to sort out the majority of genins that took the Chunin exams in Konoha. It was quite easy to stumble upon the remains of some unlucky shinobi in the forest, at least those that weren't eaten by the forest dwellers. But that wasn't what had stopped Naruto, it was what he saw coming from the very forest itself and the feeling he was getting from it. He sensed an intense, near overwhelming anger, mixed in with hatred and indignation. It was almost as if the forest itself was alive and was a yokai of sorts, one that wanted to get out and be free, but for some reason couldn't, and that made the forest mad. Naruto also felt extreme hatred towards humans, one that seemed so strong that it practically permeated its entirety. Along with that, Naruto could have sworn that he could hear screams of humans coming from the forest itself, cries for help and of anguish, making him shake a little bit. Akaji sensed that something was wrong, and when she realized what it was, she instantly casted over the two of them a calming aura, which returned Naruto to his normal self. As he regained his breath, he turned towards Akaji and spoke up. Akaji, what is wrong with this forest? It's like it is alive and is so full of hatred and malice, and those people. Naruto was still in somewhat of a shock, but was overcoming it. That forest is a manifestation of a kami that used to rule these lands, long before one you call Hashirama Senju had found his village here, Akaji stated to Naruto, who turned with a questioning look to her. Remember what I told you about the difference about a kami and a yokai, Naruto? That a kami is a yokai that isn't worshipped as one, and that yokai that is a kami that isn't worshipped as a yokai, Naruto answered, before turning back towards a forest. So the Forest of Death is literally a giant yokai, or rather kami. More like a manifestation of that kami's power, like we kitsune manifest our power in through tails or our fires. But you are not too far off the base, Akaji explained to Naruto. Long before shinobi had arrived here to settle, this land belonged to a particularly powerful kami. Moriko no kami, while most of us yokai do possess a certain affinity for a specific element. Moriko no kami manifested herself as with powers to command the nature and elements that were inherent to it, such as water and earth, as well as some others that combined one and two. Like wood, this kami was worshipped by the people that resided here before war came to these lands between Senju and Uchiha. In exchange for worship and respect, Moriko no kami gifted them with most fertile lands in all of country, strong and plentiful harvest and more. However, when shinobi did come into this area, they've driven all those that worshipped her from here, even desecrating her shrines with blood in the process. That must be made her extremely mad, Naruto commented. That is what we kitsune call an understatement. Natsumi was furious at the humans that have dared to defile her lands with their wars, and in return she made life for them here not easy. You think Forest of Death is bad enough? Try to imagine such a place encompassing all the area and territories where Konoha now stands. Akagi told him, with Naruto shuddering at the thought. Eventually, however, when the Hidden Leaf was about to be established for good, Hashirama Senju, along with Madara Uchiha and Mito Uzumaki had approached Moriko no Kami and asked for her permission to build their village. I do not know all of details, but I do know that it was Mito Uzumaki that had managed to convince Natsumi to let shinobi establish their village on her lands. In exchange, she was promised that no more blood will be spilled in her lands, and that her shrines shall be cleared of desecrations by holy waters from 3 different mountains. For a time, the peace between men and kami lasted, but it was, unfortunately, broken by humans. What had happened? Naruto asked. What happened when the hidden villages were all established and when Hashirama Senju decided to trade the captured tailed monsters to those villages? War. Akagi told him, more destruction and blood came into these lands. And Natsumi was obviously not pleased, and started to once again go against humans. That forced Hashirama Senju to venture into the heart of her holdings and to confront her once again, but this time in a battle. Nobody now knows the full details, but I do know that Moriko no Kami was sealed permanently inside her domain, which is now used by humans as a weeding out ground, and that Hashirama Senju never returned from that forest. Wait, you mean to tell me that the first Hokage was murdered by Moriko no Kami? Naruto asked in shock. Killed? I wouldn't be so certain, for Moriko no Kami is a particularly malicious kami when angered. She may still keep him alive, if only to torture him for her own amusement. But do keep in mind that despite that, she isn't an inheritably malicious kami. If anything, before the coming of shinobi, she was actually a very kind and caring kami, one that protected her worshippers and people that passed through her forests, Akagi stated to Naruto, though after decades of imprisonment and being turned into a meat grinder for humans, her attitude had shifted towards more of an angered kami, and if it wasn't for our Tenko, we, humans and yokai, would have to deal with a Kijin, whose powers would rival those of Yamada no Orochi. What does your Tenko do to her, exactly? Every time once the exams are over. Or when she has time, she comes here to exorcise the souls of the dead that were left behind, letting them pass away into Yomi. Along with that, she cleanses the forest of the malignant energies that were left due to all of fighting. Akagi told Naruto. Thanks to this, Moriko no Kami can be calmed down a bit and a threat to us all averted. As I recall, Tenko is currently there, performing the exorcising rites as we speak. Really? I wish I could see it myself, Naruto said wishfully, both Tenko and rites themselves. Maybe someday in the future. Until then we best, Naruto, hide behind that tree, now. Akagi immediately ordered Naruto to do so, and so he did, even though he understood not why she asked him to do so. His understanding came sooner than later, when he saw how a trio of Inuzuka shinobi with their dogs landed near one of the entrances to the forest. Looking rather suspicious and seemingly on edge, Naruto was glad that Akagi put around them a hiding cloak so it was safe to assume they were well hidden, so they've observed what was going to happen. In the next minute, they saw how another trio of shinobi, wearing red uniform of Iwa landed near the Inuzuka shinobi and went to them. Both Naruto and Akagi were close enough as to hear the exchange between them. So, have you brought us what we've asked? The leader of Iwa shinobi asked, before scooping out from his pocket a scroll. Just keep in mind, that while this information pays well, if we find out it to be a dud, then well make sure your Hokage knows who has been his village's routes of supply and stations on the borders. Yeah, we know all about it, not the first time we've been doing the business. Here, the leader of Inuzuka threw the Iwa ninja his scroll. Got something real special for you this time, so you better pay up more. And what would that be? The Iwa leader opened up the scroll and read quickly, before closing. And how did you come by such a valuable piece of information? Well, We've got our own ways of getting the information. Anyway, something like that is worth at least double the usual payment. Inuzuka grinned with greed written all over his face, before the scroll with payment was tossed to him. Hey, and where is the rest? This is serious stuff. Something that can get our whole clan in serious trouble, and we risked our necks for you here. No, you've risked because you were easy to buy. This is for now, and once we confirm if the information is genuine, we'll pay double that. Got it? Iwa leader stated to them. Should this be fake, then this payment will have to go to your funerals. Wait, did you hear that? Iwa leader suddenly said, making everyone turn towards one of the gates, only to see that the wind was moving the chains on it. Naruto let out a relieved sigh, thankful that they weren't spotted yet. But unfortunately, it was then that his luck ran out. With his curiosity gaining over his common sense, Naruto moved just a tiny bit closer to the group. Not noticing a small tree branch underneath his foot, once he shifted his foot a little, the branch broke with a resounding sound, breaking the cloak that Akagi had put up around him. The moment it had happened, Naruto instantly turned around and was ready to run, but he was far too late. He smashed into one of the Iwa nins, before falling onto the ground and crawling away in fear, as he was surrounded. Well, look at this, boys, we've got ourselves a little eavesdropper here. Now, didn't your mommy ever tell that you should eavesdrop on other people talking? Iwa leader said mockingly, before grabbing Naruto by his hair and bringing him closer to him. So, what should we do with him? Perhaps we'll just drop you off in that forest of death and have the wildlife take care of you. Hey, stop, just slow down for a second there, one of Inuzuka nin said. That kid, it's one of Hokage's brats, the fool one. Oh, so this is one of Yellow Flash's own mutts? The Iwa leader said, taking a closer look at Naruto. Yeah, you definitely look like that yellow bastard. Looks like we've just won ourselves a jackpot. Guys, now, don't you worry, little brat, we won't be hurting you. At least for now, you'll actually be coming on an adventure with us, straight to our village. Where? That was the point at which something completely unexpected for all of Shinobi had happened, as the head of Iwa leader was suddenly blasted with fire from behind, forcing him to drop Naruto. The very next moment all of Ninja turned around and saw Akagi, now manifested in the physical realm, looking just like she did in spiritual form, only now she was as big as an ox. She snarled and waved her 5 tails around menacingly, ready to pounce and kill all of them for even thinking about hurting Naruto. What the hell is this? Is that 9 tails? One of Ninja cried out of fear. No, you fool, but it's definitely not a normal fox. Damn it, it must be connected to the brat, since he's got those weird eyes. Get him. The Inuzuka commanded, with him and his ninkin leaping at Akagi. With a roar that could rival that of Kyuubi, Akagi didn't waste time with these mutts. Since not only she hated ninkins and Inuzuka, due to the fact of latter training the former via hunting foxes, which were Akagi's friends, but she had her dearest in danger here. The first ninkin that leapt onto Akagi herself was grabbed by one of her tails. Before being slammed into the ground, with the vice breaking the back of that dog, the 2 others that followed were literally swiped away by her other tails, which were ablaze with her summoned fire, burning and setting the fur of those beasts on fire. The intensity and power of Kitsune fire was enough to burn through chakra steel, so fur, flesh and bones of those beasts were little trouble for Akagi's fire. The next thing that had happened, Akagi was hit on her head with some form of spinning attack, making the fox stagger and move back, before regaining her bearings. She sensed that the Inuzuka were preparing to make another attack on her like this. And this time Akagi was ready, just before it connected. Akagi's left forward foot moved, before striking the moving Inuzuka and launching to his right. Before spewing fire from her mouth to incinerate her, the 2 others decided to double team on Akagi, but fueled with rage and anger, she was able to repel their initial assault from her sides. Just as they prepared to strike one more time, she extended her tails and grabbed a hold of them both before they could move. With another bout of roar, her tails became whips of fire and incinerated the captured Inuzuka, and now Akagi was prepared to deal with Iwa ninja. Until a clear child's cry of pain resonated through the clearing, instantly sobering Akagi from her bloodlust and bringing her to look at her Naruto. She saw how deep in his knee was wedged a kunai, with blood already dripping out of the wound, while he was now being held one of Iwa's shinobi, a kunai close to Naruto's throat. The 2 others were slowly retreating closer to the boy, with the leader speaking up. Okay, you demon, you don't want us to hurt the boy, now do you? The leader moved the kunai a little bit closer to Naruto's neck, making the tiniest scratch on it, riling up Akagi even further. If you man-filths dare to kill him, I swear that I'll see your village razed to the ground, with all your people served as ashes to salt the earth. Akagi spoke to them, scaring the Iwa shinobi, but she didn't make a move on them just yet. So you can talk, and no, don't worry, we won't kill him, he is now far too valuable to us now. Clearly, Lord Fourth had deceived everyone, when stated that he made 2 Jinchuriki, when in reality he had made a 3rd one as well. The Iwa leader stated with glee in his eyes, and it's all ours now. That child is no vessel for any tailed beast, and this is no tailed beast, Iwagakure ninja. You are dealing with a kitsune. A new regal and powerful voice spoke up, drawing the attention of everyone to its source, revealing it to be Amagi, walking towards them from the left of Akaji. Amagi ne-sama. Please, Naruto, Akaji spoke to Amagi, with Amagi simply raising her hand to calm her down. I'll take care of this, Akaji, do not worry, Amagi assured her, as she locked eyes with the Iwa leader. I give you one chance, Iwa ninja, release this child and flee, or I will make you pay for hurting him. And just what do you think you can do, huh? You were just a pretty woman, and we've got the Jinchuriki, so, one of I was shinobi stated, before both him and his friend next to him suddenly became engulfed in blue fire, leaving them not even a chance to cry out of pain. A second prior Amagi's eyes had glowed with dim golden light, as she casted her spell upon the fools. The leader looked shocked at what had just transpired, before looking back at Amagi. This is a trick. Why you've got us locked in a genjutsu. Kai. Yet nothing had happened or changed. Kai. He tried again and again, to no avail. You have until I count to 3 to release him. 1, Amagi told him, and just as she counted to 1, the man decided to simply run. Dropping Naruto without a care, he dashed to the opposite direction of where Amagi and Akaji stood. Until he suddenly stopped, feeling a blade wedged right between his ribs and plunged deep into his heart. Once the blade was removed, the body of the man dropped down and Tomo Uchiha stepped over him, moving to Naruto's unconscious form. With Amagi joining her, she carefully removed the kunai from his knee, before beginning to disinfect the wound via the first aid kit she carried with her in a seal, a habit from her time in service. Wounds not as deep, as I feared, so hell be fine, a scare may remain, but that is nothing too serious, Tomo concluded her analyses, as she cleaned the wound. Just apply a band-aid for now, Tomo, I will heal Naruto in my temple, and there we can finally introduce ourselves to him, Amagi told Tomo, who was glad that Amagi had finally relented. Finally, took you long enough, we should have talked to him long ago, right when he first confirmed to us that he could see yokai, Tomo stated to her friend, with Amagi releasing a slightly strained sigh. What about the bodies? Akaji will take care of them, will she? Amagi saw how Akaji nodded and went to eliminate the traces of a fight ever taking place here. Still, it is concerning that Konoha shinobi would be so willing to sell their own comrades for a quick profit. Treason and bribery were always a part of shinobi life, and those were Inuzuka, the reckless and short-sighted kind, who give in to their baser instincts of greed and ambitions. I've had to kill more than a few of Inuzuka turncoats during the last war, Tomo confirmed for Amagi, as she finished her work with Naruto. There, that should do it. Now, let's head for the temple. Several hours later, Inari's temple in Konoha. The first thing that Naruto had realized when he finally started to wake up was the fact that he was sleeping on something very soft and fluffy. And that he was really warm, once he started to open up his eyes. He also noticed that he was covered in what appeared to be large foxtails, covering his body and acting as sort of bed, pillow and sheets. When he used his hand to stroke one of the tails, he immediately heard a response in a form of a moan, coming from above him, making Naruto look up. Then he came face to face with a very beautiful woman, who possessed red like ruby's eyes, long dark brown hair and also a pair of fox ears on top of her head. Coupled with red makeup around her eyes, she was dressed in an open black coat with golden features on it and a white shirt underneath. Coupled with red mini skirt and black stockings, which left nothing to the imagination when it came to her bust, hips and legs, though it was still covering it. For a moment, Naruto could have swore he was looking at Akaji in what he imagined would be her human form, though he didn't know if kitsune were capable of becoming humans. The woman smiled him softly and caressed her cheek with her hand softly. Did you sleep well, Naruto? Now Naruto was certain that this was Akaji in human form, for it was her voice. I thought you might get cold sleeping, so I've decided to make you a bed out of my tails. Do you like them? Why yeah, they are soft and very warm, Naruto answered honestly, with Akaji being instantly pleased with the answer. Akaji? Yes. She instantly responded, locking her eyes with Naruto. Is something the matter? If you want, you can sleep a little bit more. Don't worry, I'll keep watch over you, and I find myself unable to pull my tails from you. Of course you couldn't keep your tails away from him, came a more serious, colder tone, with another fox girl revealing herself to Naruto. Unlike Akagi, this girl had white hair and white-colored fur on her 5 tails, while she dressed in a white open coat with blue features on the sleeves. Just like with Akagi, while sporting a black shirt underneath, covering far more of her cleavage, but still proving a peek at her generous assets, her skirt was just slightly longer and blue in color, with white leggings covering her legs. In figure, she could compete with Akagi in every department, as she looked just as beautiful, with her short white hair, blue eyes with red makeup near them. She had something that resembled a small scowl at Akagi, who simply giggled at the girl's irritation. Kaga, there is no need for you to scowl like that. There is plenty room for both of us, and I am sure Naruto will appreciate your soft white fur, just as much he enjoys my own right now, Akagi suggested with a light-hearted tone, with Naruto widening his eyes, realizing that he looked at another kitsune that was regular guest to him, Kaga. Kaga was one of the kitsune that most often visited and watched over him, rivaling Akagi in that department, where Akagi seemed more light-hearted and easy to get along. At least for Naruto, Kaga was the serious and nearly no-nonsense type. One that seemed fully focused on her duty and didn't like to deviate from it, at least at the first glance. Despite her cold exterior, she was caring and affectionate towards Naruto, as well as one of the main teachers to Naruto when it came to his education. Once Kitsune discovered that Naruto was capable of perceiving them and communicating with them, Kaga took it upon herself to educate the boy, first in reading, and later in various sciences. In her mind, a child and a person that was an illiterate, despite being a child, was weak and not worth anything. So Kaga started to teach Naruto. Thanks to her, Naruto was able to learn how to read just a month after starting, as well as to write and more, before moving on to math, literatures, sciences and language, being a demanding, strict and also a very effective teacher that she was. Kaga managed to make Naruto into a rather intelligent person. Despite him being a little child, still, while he did get lots of headaches and was more than often exhausted, Naruto was still far better off in knowledge and intelligence department than his siblings. They might have started to train in chakra, but when it came to reading, let's just say that if Naruto wanted to hide from them for all of eternity, he could do so safely in library, where he now practically lived, in no small part thanks to Kaga. Along with her strict personality, she was also a sister to Akagi, though he never did learn who the older sibling was. While they got along famously, complementing each other well, Naruto was a witness to when the two kitsune were arguing with each other, with him being the reason for it, and if his sense of danger was correct, now was one such time. You have always been too lax with your duties, Akagi. Had it not been for you, Naruto wouldn't get hurt in the first place. You should feel ashamed of yourself, letting some humans get an upper hand on you. Kaga chastised her sister. Had he been with me, no one would as much as lay a hand on him. Perhaps I should request Amagi-ne-sama to be put in charge of protecting Naruto more often, if not on a permanent basis. That got a visible tick out of Akagi in a reaction, as she softly removed her tails from Naruto, letting them both rise up, with Naruto moving away from the two sisters. Kaga, aren't you getting a just little bit full of yourself? Akagi asked her in a not-so-malicious manner, because as far as I can recall, I've never, ever, been lax in my work to look after Naruto, and as for what had happened, there wasn't any way to anticipate that such a thing would happen, and besides, I've had everything perfectly under control. Such a situation should NT have been allowed to happen, sister, Kaga retorted, yet not only did you not properly defend him, but you've even allowed him to get injured and nearly captured. It is obvious that what Naruto requires is a disciplined and dedicated caretaker, perhaps one who, for instance, had taught him how to write and read. And who scared Naruto every time that said teacher got into ill mood? Akagi asked back, with Kaga's brow twitching and her tails starting to swing a little more erratically. Did you know it that I've always managed to calm him down and make him go to your lessons when you scared him? Had it not been for me, our dear Naruto might be grown afraid of books and writing, especially with how you worked with him. Yet I was the one who taught him the value of knowledge, intelligence and reading, unlike you, who seemed perfectly fine with him going illiterate, just like his siblings. Kaga retorted to her sister, with now Akagi's tails starting to swing more. With me, Naruto discovered what a treasure knowledge is, and because of this, he is far better prepared for the world than his siblings. Maybe you should go and watch over them, dear sister. Oh no, I wouldn't want to deprive you of the opportunity to teach those brats what it means to be afraid of holding a book, so why don't go and show them the value of traumatizing education? Akagi suggested, with Kaga narrowing her eyes upon her sister. We'll be here perfectly fine, waiting for you, me and Naruto, alone and without any interference. So that he would get attacked again? Not a chance, Kaga stated with force, and besides, Naruto must be getting tired of your presence. Maybe he would prefer to spend time with a fox that knows how to restrain herself in front of a 5-year-old child. Or maybe he would like to be with a kitsune that makes 5-year-old children read books that are studied by upperclassmen in schools. Akagi asked with steel in her voice, and besides, it is obvious that Naruto prefers to be with me over someone as cold as you are. After all, he did state that my fur and tails are the finest. Now Kaga was truly starting to get angry. Liar. He simply said that they were fluffy and warm, nothing more. Kaga spoke back, before smirking a little, but that is just the first time he had to touch a kitsune's tail, and naturally he would be impressed, even if it's tails of a lousy kitsune such as yourself. Naturally, once he gets a taste of my soft, snow-white fur, there will be no contest as to which kitsune he would most likely want to be. Oh ho. As if he would ever get warm with your tails, sister. I mean, the way you were always so stiff and cold. I fear he might catch a cold from just touching them. Akagi said with strength in her words, before starting to glare at her sister. So do not get in the way, Kaga. I am perfectly capable of taking care of Naruto. How funny. I was about to say the same thing, Akagi, Kaga stated with a glare, and Naruto was starting to get afraid that the two might be getting ready to fight. That would have been the case, had the door into the room not opened and in stepped Amagi with a seemingly calm look on her face. Both Akagi and Kaga stopped their glaring match to turn and look at her approaching them. Amagi ne-sama. Akagi was about to speak up, before Amagi suddenly whacked Akagi on the head with her right arm, making younger Kitsune yelp out of pain and grab her head with her hands, with a visible bump already there. Ne-sama. Just as Kaga was about to defend her position here, she received the same procedure from Amagi, leaving her clutching her head and nursing a new large bump on it with her sister in a near identical position. Akagi, Kaga, how many times have I told you not to fight each other? Sisters should get along no matter what their personalities may be, and fighting is no good way to make friends, Amagi stated with a sagely wisdom, before softly taking Akagi and Kaga's right hands. Now, shake hands and apologize to each other, or else. The moment Amagi said that, Naruto could have sworn that temperature in the room dropped to 0, and both Akagi and Kaga shivered. I am sorry, dear sister, Akagi and Kaga said at the same time and shook hands, their argument forgotten already, with Amagi's smile dawning upon her face. That's better. Now, could you two please give me and Naruto some privacy and tell Tomo to come here? Amagi asked of Kaga and Akagi, with both nodding to Amagi and leaving Naruto alone in the room with Amagi, who turned to Naruto and smiled softly to him. I apologize for how they've behaved just now. They are wonderful sisters to have and love them dearly, but there are some times when I have to remind them of how to behave. I hope they haven't scared you, Naruto. No, they didn't, Naruto answered, as took a good look at Amagi, and nearly had to close his eyes. Both Kaga and Akagi exuded powerful auras around them, with Kaga's be blue in color, while Akagi's red, and both had evenly matched intensity and power, but when Naruto looked at Amagi, it was like he was fully surrounded and encompassed in her aura of soft, warming and radiant power. It was as if Naruto was in the middle of forest of death, only instead of feeling of rage and murder, he felt calmness, safety and love. Naruto didn't know if this what a god or kami felt like, but he had a feeling that Amagi was far more than just a kitsune. Are you also a kitsune? Naruto asked in an unsure voice, with Amagi softly smiling to him.
Where are my manners? I am sorry, though I saw you first quite some time ago. We haven't yet been properly introduced yet, Amagi said gracefully, before stepping closer to Naruto, and revealing to him her kitsune ears, and nine tails chocolate brown colored fur. Naruto, it is my pleasure to finally meet you officially. My name is Amagi, and I am a priestess and servant to goddess Inari, as well as a kitsune, but you may already know me by my official title Tenko, Amagi no Tenko.
Amagi no Tenko, wait, does that mean that you are the one who told Akagi, Kaga and other kitsune to look after me? Naruto asked Amagi, with her nodding to him, but why did you exactly do that? From what I understand, kitsune aren't yokai known for protecting people, unless those are their family. Yes, you are correct in that, Naruto. There is a reason to this, but first I would like for us to take a seat and wait for my friend to arrive. Please. Amagi motioned for Naruto to sit before the small table, with her sitting in front of him. A minute after they were seated, door slid to the side, revealing Tomo Uchiha stepping inside, in her usual garments and with her sword near her side. She took a closer look at Naruto, briefly wondering if her son would have looked like that, had he been allowed to live. Deciding not to get too lost in the past, she shook off her thoughts about Masamune and focused on the present. She took a seat next to Amagi, prompting her to speak up. Naruto, this is my friend, Tomo Uchiha. You may not remember it, but the two of you had met when you just born, Amagi said with a smile. I remember you, Naruto suddenly said, much to surprise of both women. I think I do, You were in the hospital. Back when I was really small and, you always kept me company when nobody was around. Thank you. It was really scary, being there alone. I am surprised you remember something from back then. Tomo admitted to Naruto with a small smile. You were less than a week old at that point, not to mention suffering from an ailment, and you don't need to thank me. I was only doing what I thought was right, and seeing a little baby all alone in that room, it didn't sit well with me. You did it just because I was alone there and nobody was there to help me, without any possible reward or something like that. Naruto asked of Tomo, with her nodding. Then you were better than most people I know, and definitely far better than my sister's caretaker. Wait, how long have I been out cold? Naruto asked with worry. A little over an hour. Don't worry. I've been informed by Izuna that none have caught on to you being absent yet. Amagi assured him, and yes, Mebuki is still in the house, while your parents and siblings have decided to take a break and headed for a ramen stand they like so much.
Did they at least take Mito with them? Oh, wait, if Mebuki in the house, then they decided to leave Mito alone with that harpy. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh. They could have at least taken Mito out for a walk, instead of leaving her with Mebuki.
You don't seem particularly concerned with the fact that your parents haven't asked about your whereabouts, do you? Tomo asked out of curiosity. I know that your parents have decided to train your older siblings, while leaving you out of it. Don't you feel angry and slighted for not being included in this? No, not really angry. Well, maybe a bit sad that they've stopped to pay attention to me as much as they did. But not really angry. I mean, I get it that they need to be trained earlier to better control Nine Tails chakra, and that starting out early is better. Naruto told the two. I'm angrier at the fact that they almost forgot about Mito, and instead brought in that woman. She doesn't even care what happens to Mito, so long as she gets to show my mom and dad that she's a good friend and can be trusted, Naruto said with anger evident in his words. Yes, I too would like to ask with what place was your mother thinking?
When she decided to ask Mebuki Haruno of all people to sit with her daughter. I mean, that woman had been after Minato since academy days and had always hated your mother, without hiding it all that much. Tomo told Naruto, it must make her sick, to see Kushina with Minato's children, and to be forced to sit with the youngest one. I don't know what she has in mind, but I doubt it's something good. I'd wager it's got something to do with politics or something like that.
Then it is a good thing that Izuna is there and watches over Mito. If something were to happen, either Kaga or Akaji would be able to get there within a minute's notice, Amagi assured them. Now, I am afraid that we'll have to change the subject of our discussion. Naruto, you've asked me why I've tasked my kitsune with watching over you. Well, the reason to that comes from the fact that you are a special person, not like most humans. I am certain you can already guess what I mean by that. You mean the fact that I can see yokai, and also understand what people feel and when they lie to me? Naruto asked, with Amagi nodding to him. Well, maybe it's some kind of ability of Uzumaki, or from my father, something like my mom's chakra chains or... Naruto, if a yokai wants, it will become impossible to perceive for any human, whether they have a Sharingan, Byakugan or even a Rinnegan. I can attest to that fact, because I too couldn't perceive yokai, until Amagi had taught me how to perceive them in the spiritual realm, Tomo stated to Naruto, and there are no other dujutsu that can allow a person to perceive yokai in the realm they live in. But you, Naruto, are different, because you were gifted with such an ability. Gifted? You mean, someone gave it to me? Naruto asked of them, with Amagi and Tomo nodding to him. Yes, Naruto, you were gifted this power, along with several others by not just anybody, but by deities themselves, Amagi stated to him, surprising Naruto. 3 deities have decided to bestow their blessings and essences upon you. Those 3 were Izanami, goddess of creation and death, Parvati, a goddess with 3 separate aspects, which include Durga, goddess of war and protector against evil, Kali, goddess of destruction and death, and Parvati herself, goddess of love and fertility. But the one who gifted you your unique perception is Shiva, god of creation and destruction. I was there and was a witness to it taking place, Naruto. 3 deities. But why would they do something like that? Naruto asked of Amagi. I am not someone as special as Natsu and Narumi, and I don't have the Kyuubi in me, so why did they do something like that to me? We don't fully know, but it may have something to do with the fact that you've been branded by the Shinigami. Tomo spoke up, on the night Kyuubi attacked and you were born. I helped your father by stopping Kyuubi for long enough to let Minato do what he wanted to. He used a jutsu that summoned a Shinigami into our world, and it separated the beast into 2 and placed the 2 halves into your siblings. Now, normally to even summon a Shinigami into our world would mean that the summoner pays with his life, but, something went wrong that night, and instead of Minato getting his soul eaten by Shinigami, you ended up branded by it. Branded by it? Is this why I was dying back then? Naruto asked. Yes, the brand was slowly taking away your soul, piece by piece. It is an especially cruel and horrific thing for any person to come to possess. And as far as I know, only very few people had ever been branded. And only one person has ever survived getting it removed. You, Amagi told Naruto, who sat quietly, thinking about it all. However, while the brand was gone, your soul was already so weak and small, that you wouldn't have survived much longer, and that was when the deities came and, they've shared some of their essences, their own soul, with you Naruto, so that you may survive. The sign of it you see all the time in the mirror, that being your own golden eyes, same eyes as Shiva's, your father. Wait, this doesn't make any sense. How can Shiva be a parent to me? I have my own parents, and they are humans. Naruto was shocked to hear what Amagi had to say. And I do not deny it, Naruto, since Minato and Kushina are your parents who gave you your life. However, with deities, it can get not as clear as it may seem, Amagi continued. In order to save your life, they put a bit of themselves into you. That is, in essence, the same process that parents do when they create their children, and those three had done with you. Shiva and Parvati can be considered to be your divine father and mother, while Izanami is now your divine grandmother. They are your family now, just as Kushina and Minato are as well to you.
Then why I haven't ever seen them? Did they just give me those powers and had abandoned me, because they got disappointed or something? Was starting to get clear that Naruto was starting to get hysterical, with Amagi deciding to spread around them calming aura, so as to let Naruto handle it with greater ease. It is not as easy or cut and dry as it may seem, Naruto.
What they did, it is something that deities do not do out of impulse or petty desire.
Especially with one like Shiva, who is capable of seeing every possible future of every living being.
And they hadn't abandoned you, Naruto, and I am certain that even now they are still watching you. But they can't interfere, lest they draw attention from other deities and other beings of similar nature and power. Amagi told Naruto, the world that we currently inhabit is called Sakai. But it is only one among countless other worlds in all of cosmos. Deities exist to protect the world and life upon them, but at the same time, they can't fully interfere with the way life evolves and changes on those worlds. While you could say that deities govern the worlds, they do so indirectly, through such things as religion and creatures like Kitsune, but not in any other way. There is a set of laws that deities follow, and one of them states that they can't enforce their direct power over people of world. Why not? If a god or goddess were to lead people of a certain world, wouldn't that world prosper? Naruto asked the question of Amagi. Let me ask you something, Naruto. Would the people accept a being that isn't like them as their leader, who tries to give them something that they can't fully comprehend? Amagi asked of Naruto, who started to think about it real hard. Well, it would depend on a deity itself and how he would rule, Naruto said in an unsure way, with Amagi chuckling a little. Indeed, but the deities have made sure they do not exert such kind of power or control over mortals and worlds. The last time such a thing happened led to a millennia of tyranny by Kagaya Otsutsuki. And then when her sons, Hagoromo, Hamura and Shiva, rebelled and defeated her, it led not to peace, but only to the creation of a cycle that now grips this world. Amagi revealed to Naruto. This world, Naruto, had been once controlled by a daughter of Izanami and mother of Shiva, and her actions, along with actions of Hagoromo and his descendants, had stopped this world from progressing and humans from growing up as people and individuals. Naruto was once more shocked to hear what Amagi had to say to him. What are you saying? Are you saying that our world is not right? Naruto asked in an unsure way. It is a hard pill to swallow, Naruto, but when you put aside your ideals and blind loyalty, and start giving it thought, it becomes evident that something is clearly very wrong with our world. Tomo spoke up again, getting Naruto's attention. If you don't believe us, then let's think about it. We may have shinobi, Naruto, but do you know what a shinobi truly is? Do you think it's a hero to one's village or people? No. It is a person that was trained since childhood to do things most people can. Made to kill, steal, lie and destroy lives, execute any given order without giving it a second thought. And there are thousands of them, ruthless and specially trained warriors that in 1 minute can go from being a person's savior to being that same person's killer.
I've seen such situation happen far too many times to count. When shinobi backstab yesterday's friends and allies, or when shinobi from one village betrays his own for quick profit or something else, and that's not to mention all the different infractions in the villages, brought about by politics, corruption, or power plays, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, Naruto, an iceberg that was formed thanks to my ancestors not being able to settle their personal feud.
Ancestors? Naruto asked, It is a long story, Naruto. One that intertwines with story of Shiva and Hagoromo. But that isn't the point at the moment, I am afraid. Amagi told Naruto, the point is, Naruto, is that the world we live in. One that you were born into, is one where power dictates everything. And everyone tries to make a grab for it, amassing it and wanting only more power, and nothing else in the end really matters in the shinobi world. It is a near endless cycle, where the weak and deviant are grinded into dust, while strong feast on top of their bones, and anyone who tries to break away from the system, to pose even the slightest threat to the cycle is ultimately destroyed. Such was the fate of Uzumaki people. The Uzumaki? Wait, you said people, not the clan. I thought that Uzumaki was just a clan, living on a separate island. My mom always gushes about how she is now the only real Uzumaki and is now head of the clan. Naruto noted out, she can get carried away at times, but still. Oh. I bet she's been telling that to everyone willing to listen. That loud-mouthed ogre, Tomo muttered under breath. But it's still loud enough so that everyone could hear it.
Your mother, for the lack of a better term, is an arrogant,
self-centered hypocrite that spouts to everyone how she is the sole real princess of Uzumaki clan and the inheritor of its traditions, customs and so forth, except the fact that she doesn't even know said customs and traditions. Or what that clan of hers truly was. The Uzumaki were a somewhat isolated people, with their own customs and traditions, as well as several clans so forth. For most of the world, Uzumaki might have been a clan, but in reality, calling an Uzumaki that hailed from Taira clan by the name of their people, would be the same as calling an Uchiha a leaf, just because he hails from same people. The point is that your mother is trying to fit in the shoes that are way too big for her. How do you know all about it? Naruto asked of Tomo. Because I was raised by the person your mother claims to have studied under.
Mito Uzumaki, born in Minamoto clan, same as your mother. But clans, families and blood weren't as important to Uzumaki as they are to others. They cherished bonds made with others and were accepting to people that accepted them. Within them burned a fire that could light the way for a new path, yet one that shinobi weren't able to perceive and advance by. Tomo told with a sad sigh and look. You want to know how Uzumaki differed from the other people, Naruto, then look up above this table and tell me what do you see.
I see a lamp. An electrical lamp, to precise, Naruto said, with Tomo nodding to him.
Yes, yet some 40 or even 30 years ago, something like that was considered to be impossible to achieve for most people of the world.
All, save for Uzumaki, who achieved it over 350 years prior to any of the hidden villages ever being established. Tomo revealed to Naruto, they've had developed natural ways of creating electrical energy, medicine and procedures to cure most ailments without using chakra, TV, ovens and so forth. And do you know why they've done it while most of the world didn't get it until Uzumaki people were destroyed? Because they weren't focused on the warfare or politics with the big world, they just lived in peace, Naruto said, realizing what Tomo and Amagi meant. Is this what you meant by saying that the world we live in has stopped in its progress? Yes, Naruto, that is what we mean, Amagi confirmed to him. Not just in technological sense, but also in a moral plane the people have not just stopped, but regressed. In the world of shinobi, it is always easier to lie, cheat, kill and steal, than to ask for help or offer one.
And that doesn't just concern the shinobi, even daimyo and nobility of the lands and countries are victims of this system and cycle.
Since they grow up in the world where a human life's value depends on how much money it will cost to kill him. Those in positions of power, like daimyos, they do not truly care about what happens to the world or even to their people and country, for they are so removed from masses and world, that they don't even realize the full extent of the catastrophes they allow to happen, or worse yet, provoke into taking place. Would you like to know one of the main reasons why the Uzumaki people were nearly wiped out? It happened because the daimyos of other lands had witnessed their boons and prosperity and wished to grab it all themselves. Do you think they've asked for it? No, they did not. They simply sent their best weapon to take it all. Shinobi. All 4 out of 5 great nations participated in that horrendous event, with Konoha being the only one to not take part, since it already had the access to all those technologies, though at worse quality. This is the reality of our world. Naruto power dictates, right? Naruto sat there, shocked to the core and wishing he couldn't believe what he had heard, what Amagi just told him.
But there wasn't even a speck of lies in her words, since he knew for sure she wasn't telling lies to him. The Uzumaki were wiped out just because a bunch of greedy nobles and daimyos had wanted to take what wasn't theirs, and instead of just asking for it or trading for it, they just sent shinobi to get it, and they did get it all, but in the process destroyed an entire nation, and all because of other people's greed.
And that is when Naruto began to fully think about all they said. About the world they lived in, people in it and all that was happening. That's when Naruto started to feel like a real fool for the first time in his life. Shinobi weren't heroes, no matter how much people had the civilians and public had tried to make them to be. They were merciless instruments in the hands of those in power, and when they weren't controlled by others, then they were potential weapons of massive amounts of destruction and casualties, trained to kill, to steal, to gather information and cheat, from the young age and literally indoctrinated into believing that this is the only way to live, and this has been going on for hundreds of years with no end. The Sengoku period may be officially over, but in reality? It just took on a new face and continued in a more organized fashion. The Shinobi World Wars, conflicts that see villages clash with each other in battles and where lives are thrown away in thousands. Thousands, tens of thousands of shinobi and other people. All of them with lives of their families, dreams and so forth, all are grinded into dust by war and death. And villages portrays their most skilled killers and mass murderers as their heroes. Whilst those that have fallen are more often than not forgotten. His own father and mother are the prime examples, with his father earning his name as Yellow Flash not just because of his jutsu, but also because of how fast he moved in battles, and even though the war is over, shinobi still fight and engage each other, because even Naruto understood that there was no true peace in shinobi world, an endless war, one that simply heats up and dies down, but never stops. That is their world, a world where he and Mito were born into, and he was destined to become a part of it. His dream about helping people was still within him.
But with the world as it is, he really was a fool to think that he would be able to help all the people. Especially when those said people will expect a stab in their back at any moment and opportunity. A world that is stuck in an endless loop of war, betrayal,
alliances and whim of the powerful. This is the world where people can level mountains, create lakes and seas with chakra and use all that power for the benefit of everyone. But all they do is use it for destruction and death of others, and he will be learning it too as well, with his brother and sister already on their way to becoming next mass murderers, and what is worse is that they don't realize it yet. Hell, their own parents are lying to them, and Naruto can't help but feel appalled at all of this. And then there is Mito, his sweet, precious and innocent little sister, a light that warms his heart. She too will be swallowed up by that cycle.
At the thought of it all, of being part of the cycle that destroys any hope for better tomorrow, it made Naruto sick, and both Amagi and Tomo saw it, with concern written on their faces. It took everything from Naruto just to regain his composure, but there was now darkness in his eyes, one that Tomo had seen in others and herself. It was the realization of the flawed world that they lived in and the feeling of sickness at it. Naruto collected his thoughts and breath, before speaking up. Amagi, the reason why you protected me was because if people were to find out I was different from them, then they would try to kill me, or to make use of me, like a weapon or something. Naruto asked in a disturbingly calm voice, with Amagi nodding to him.
We kept an eye out for you because we couldn't know how your powers and nature would manifest themselves. Along with that, a lot of people in this village not only are superstitious,
but also naive and arrogant, and because of how you look different from the other children of Hokage, they had gotten in their heads the ideas of you being either possessed by Kurama, or being Kurama himself in disguise. Amagi explained to him, my foxes have kept not just an eye out for you, but also slightly manipulated the thoughts and minds of those around you, so as to lower their aggression towards you. Glares and bad words weren't the only things they are capable of.
And my parents don't even know about it all, Naruto stated, with some kind of grim understanding. For those people, I am a monster, yet my parents are heroes, despite all the deaths they caused and how I've nearly died because of them. Talk about a messed up world. Did Shiva or others tell you anything about why they've done all that to me?
No, Naruto, all I know is that Shiva asked of me to look after you, that the life ahead of you will be difficult and hard, Amagi said with sympathy. I can't say I know or understand how Shiva thinks and acts, but he isn't a cold calculating machine or an uncaring god. He doesn't make a plan for the mortals to follow, but gives them an opportunity to use, one that opens 1,000 roads, with millions of possible outcomes. He did the same thing to you, Naruto, and he called you his son.
I may not be very well versed in things divine and all that, but from what I can tell, from what I saw and what I understand, I'd say that Shiva saw something inside of you, a potential to make a mark on the world, or to even change it for good, Tomo said with honesty in her voice. But that's not what really matters in the end, it's what you actually want, Naruto. What do I want? Naruto asked again, thinking about for a few seconds before speaking up again. When my parents asked me what I wanted to be, I told them that I wanted to be someone who helps people, no matter who they are and where they are from. I was laughed at and then my words were disregarded as something a naive child would say, with my siblings and some others telling me, That I can only be a hero if I serve the leaf. I now realize that I was naive in my beliefs and dream of thinking that I could do as I please, but that doesn't matter, Naruto suddenly stated to them. Naruto? Amagi asked with curiosity, just because the world is wrong doesn't mean I have to follow its set rules, and I don't care what others may think. Men or gods, shinobi or daimyo, I don't care if they just disregard my ideals and dreams. Because I care for it, and I don't want to change that about myself, I will help others, men, gods and yokai, not out of greed or ambition, but because they need it and when they need it. Naruto's voice gained firmness and determination radiated from him, with Amagi smiling at him, with Tomo silently feeling good about the kid. I don't want to be Hokage or daimyo, but I do want to help others, and to do that, to help people live in peace, I would have to do something impossible, and I'll do it. And what would that be? Tomo asked of him. It's to change the world itself. And if that's what it takes to stop this cycle, then I'll do it. One way or another, Naruto declared with firmness and strength. I know that this world doesn't appreciate people that do not fit into the system and that don't play by his rules.
Well, then I'll just learn this world's rules and how it works. I'll learn to the heart its system, but when the time comes, I'll break that cycle. If I have to become the strongest warrior in the world to destroy the shinobi world, then so be it, but I will not shinobi at heart. I'll not be like that, because even if I may use shinobi tactics, weapons, jutsu and other stuff, but at the core I'll not succumb to the temptation and darkness. Both Tomo and Amagi saw and felt that Naruto was sincere and actually determined in his thoughts. And it showed as both felt it. They were seeing not just the birth of a new person here.
One that wasn't willing to break to the cycle, like Tomo had done. He will bend, but not break, adapt, but never adopt the philosophy. Such a road ahead of Naruto, it will be one filled with dangers, hardships and even possibly the world itself being turned against him. To survive, much less succeed, he will need to have every possible advantage in his arsenal, knowledge and training that would put to shame even some of the most gifted geniuses in the world. To walk the path to a new world, he will need to become someone capable of breaking the old one, someone who can be more than just a man or shinobi. And they both understood it. Are you serious about it, Naruto? Tomo asked of him, with complete seriousness clear in her eyes. Will you walk that path? One where you may find yourself alone and all of world prepared to destroy you for being something different from them all? Yes, Naruto said without a second of hesitation in his voice, with Tomo letting out a sigh. That's exactly what I feared you would say, Tomo said. But without any sadness or worry in her voice, only smile coming to her face.
All right, Naruto, if you really are determined, and I can clearly see that you are as determined as it gets, then you'll need to be prepared for the world to come after you, and I don't mean just learning all the stuff you can get. You need to start training to fight like a shinobi, to understand and live by it, if only to learn how to tear that abominable thing down, and lucky for you, son, my schedule is as clear as it gets.
Wait, are you serious? Naruto asked of her Tomo, who nodded to him with a toothy grin. I am as serious as it gets, Naruto, and an Uzumaki, whether born or adopted, never goes back on its word. You better believe that I'll train you. And I'll make you more than anything that Academy, Minato and Kushina could even mold you into. Tomo told him, I carry with me knowledge, skills, secrets and jutsu of Senju, Uchiha and Uzumaki, along with everything that I've learned in my life. I can assure you the training will not be easy. In fact, it will be a living hell. But like Mito Uzumaki told me in the start of my training, hard in training, easy in battle, and believe me, the saying still holds true. So are you willing to accept me as your teacher?
Yes, sensei, Naruto said with happiness in his voice, before bowing before her in honor, before realizing something important. Wait, but what Mito? If I will be training as hard as you say, then who will be watching over her and playing with her? And I don't want to leave her all alone with that harpy Mebuki.
Leave that little problem to me, Naruto, since I happen to know a particularly well-suited kitsune already to swoop in to take that position from Mebuki. Amagi chuckled lightly. Don't think that you can just hog him all to yourself, Tomo. Me and my sisters won't forgive you for such an act, not to mention that would be missing everything he has to learn from us.
What, you mean you'll also train me? But what can you teach me? I mean, I am not yokai or an oni, and even if I am a demigod or something, I don't think that I can learn any of kitsune magic, Naruto said in an unsure way.
And who told you that, Same people that said that yokai do not exist. Amagi asked in a playful tone. Back in the day, Naruto, among Uzumaki existed specially trained warriors, people dedicated to upholding the balance between men and yokai. These men and women trained in a secret art that was created by one of Shiva's own grandsons, one known as Abe no Seimei, or Seimei Uzumaki. He learned the secrets of magic and nature, unraveled the mysteries and learned how to utilize energies beyond normal men. He wasn't the first shinobi, but the first onmyoji. So, how would you like to learn how to use the powers of yokai and truly discover what this world truly holds in all its planes? I would like that very much, thank you, Naruto said, bowing before Amagi. I promise that it'll make you proud, Tenko-sama. Please, just call me Amagi, no need for such official titles, Amagi said a little bit bashfully. Looks like we'll have our hands full in the future, Tomo. Seems to be so, but I wouldn't have it any other way, Tomo admitted to her friend. She could feel that this kid will go far, and she will be there to help him progress, for as long as needed. 8 months later, Namikaze Estate, as autumn gave way to winter. Rolled in the new year and spring came to awake the world from its slumber under the snows. And now spring was giving way to hot summer, as the May was reaching its end before passing the torch to June, and while not much had changed for the world as a whole, those changing seasons saw a change in one Naruto Uzumaki Minamoto, who once was known as Naruto Namikaze. He didn't change the name officially, but after giving it some thought and also after continued neglect from his parents, he found himself unable to associate himself with the name of Namikaze. Henceforth, he decided to use the name of Uzumaki Minamoto. Since he was a part of Uzumaki people and of Minamoto clan, from his mother's line, of course, he didn't exactly tell his family of that change, since they wouldn't understand it, or maybe even care, but those that did care about Naruto knew of this small, yet somewhat important change in character, and that was just one of such changes to him that came after he opened his eyes to the world for real and began his training under Tomo and Amagi. Just as Tomo promised, the training under her was brutal and harsh. Focusing both on his physical and mental aspects, teaching Naruto as much theory as she made him apply all that he learned in practice. To say that he didn't think about quitting would be a lie, since Naruto had thought about it quite a lot at times, but as time went on, he stopped thinking about it and focused on what was important, and that was achieving his dream, and as soon as he stopped caring about the harshness of Tomo's teaching methods, Naruto noticed that over time, exercises and training was starting to come to him easier and easier. His body was taking it all and just adapting to the circumstances. Growing stronger, more agile and nimbler, with Naruto noticing the fact of his training paying off when a few weeks prior Tomo had made Naruto do exercises he did when he first started. To say that he was shocked would be an understatement, and it only reinforced Naruto's will and determination to progress. So far, Tomo focused on giving Naruto a clear understanding of what is required of a strong shinobi, and made sure that Naruto was developing and progressing along every possible route she could think of. She didn't try and make Naruto fully focused on one aspect, instead favoring versatility and jack-of-all-trades approach to the situation. And she did pass that down onto Naruto: taijutsu, ninjutsu,
genjutsu, fuinjutsu. All of that Naruto was learning under Tomo, some in practice and some in theory. The only thing she kept from him so far was bukijutsu, a set of disciplines which revolve around utilization of weapons. While he did technically train in that department, learning how to use kunai, shuriken and some similar weapons, Tomo decided to postpone the training with real weapons until she knew that he was ready, and Naruto didn't complain. He did have his hands full as it is, with knowledge of Uzumaki,
Uchiha and Senju being provided to him and open for learning. Most of that wouldn't be really useful to Naruto if he didn't have his chakra unlocked. And thankfully, he did unlock his chakra pretty early on. In fact, Tomo had managed to make Naruto unlock his chakra on second day of their training. With the assistance from Kaga, of all people, the memory of that day still shudders Naruto.
But it did reveal his full potential for use, such as his powerful sensory abilities, which complemented his empathic power, allowing him to hear emotions and sense thoughts in abstract form from all nearby people and not just those that he directly looked at, and that included both yokai and humans. And while at first it was really overwhelming to control, Naruto quickly learned how to effectively use it without hurting himself.
Next thing that Naruto found out was that he had inherited his mother's chakra chains,
which he could use and summon, with only 2 at the time.
But they were really useful in his spars with Tomo. She did make him use every possible advantage he had against her in that monthly bell test she made him take against her.
So far, he has had not much success, as she defeated him every time, despite how much he progressed and became stronger, though he had to admit that every time he did get stronger and faster and put it to use in test, Tomo simply tried a little bit more against him, showing that she still had an advantage against him. Well, it only fueled Naruto's desire to get that damn bell.
Fuinjutsu was something that he found not just useful, but also very interesting and fascinating to learn. For Naruto, it wasn't as much a chore or a hard subject to learn, as much as it was a hobby that he found himself indulging and devouring all that was connected to it. Seals, their structures, intricacies of writing them. Everything about them was fascinating for Naruto to learn and master, with his inherent ability to see into depth of things and understand them, of which he learned from Amagi. Naruto had no trouble discerning the true nature and all details of seals that were present before him. All he needed was time and patience, and both were in abundance in his stock, and as for creation of those, thanks to Kaga, Naruto had no trouble drawing intricate and complex patterns of that were required for the seals. Already he was able to create simple seals, like small storage seals, simple flashbang seals and incendiary seals that, despite their simplicity, were still very useful when properly applied. Genjutsu was in many ways the same as Fuinjutsu, and it was one of the subjects that Naruto studied under both Tomo and Amagi at the same time and separately. While there were some initial difficulties in focusing and utilizing the mind for this art,
after discovering meditations and learning how to clear his mind, Naruto was able to learn how to utilize the art of illusions, given the fact that in many ways Genjutsu was using a person's imagination and creativity. Naruto found it rather interesting and unique in its utilization. While he wasn't capable of any highly complex illusions, he was already showing quite some advances, according to Amagi and Tomo.
And speaking of Amagi, she wasn't kidding that Naruto will be learning about the secrets of the world and how to utilize them. It was thanks to her that he discovered the fact of world being alive and even exuding its own chakra, called Senjutsu chakra, just like all living things do. She also told him of the fact that in time, once he managed to learn how to connect with the world on deeper level, Naruto will be able to learn how to collect that nature chakra into himself, using it to amplify his abilities and even utilize the two secret arts that are known to summons and yokai, Senjutsu and Yujutsu. Amagi did also state that most summons also were capable accessing the nature chakra,
and could teach their summoners how to do it, but she discouraged Naruto from learning from how to use nature chakra that way.
According to her, while it did provide a very significant boost to powers, it will also never going to be a fully complete sage mode, as she called it, because the sage learned it from someone else and not on his own. While it was confusing at first, Naruto did figure out that Amagi meant that learning sage mode and using nature chakra, a human will have to learn how to do so on his own, without others' help. That, and also the fact that sages with summons learn to use nature chakra at the place where summons live,
which is also, as she stated, was polluted with summon's essence, so when a sage trains, he also absorbs some of it into him, gaining characteristics of the summon when using sage mode. In short, as Amagi herself had put it, if Naruto learns how to use sage mode from summons, he will be able to use it only up to 30% full power, whereas were he to learn it on his own, he would use all 100% of nature chakra's powers and abilities.
And as for his studies in the realm of Inmyoto, as was called the art practiced by Onmyoji, Naruto was mostly still in the theoretical area, studying various yokai, their characteristics, where they lived and how best to approach them. If he thought yokai was diverse before, then now he has to say that yokai really did come in all shapes and sizes, from simple biwa bokuboku to monstrous and legendary Yamato no Orochi. There is simply no end to yokai that Naruto keeps finding out about. Along with that, Naruto also recently began learning more of esoteric arts of Inmyoto that are at the core of the art. According to Akagi and Kaga, once Naruto is strong enough and grown up a little bit, he will be able to create a special pact with the yokai, creating a bond between them and making the yokai a familiar, or a shikigami as they called it. Such shikigami are capable of not only bolstering powers of their master, but also grant special abilities to the one they make contract with, and as Naruto was already guessing, both Kaga and Akagi were prepared to become his first shikigami, and he wasn't at all against it, since he knew they were his closest friends and their loyalty would be undisputed. He already promised to make them his shikigami when he reaches that point. But for now he still needed to learn more about nature chakra and Inmyoto, before starting to utilize it for full effect. While a yokai could become a shikigami for any person, all of Kitsune's sisters did emphasize to Naruto that an experienced Onmyoji is capable of bringing out not just his own potential, but also full power of his shikigami, while an untrained contractor won't be able to make use of all abilities provided by the shikigami. Aside from the training and studying, Naruto found his life to be surprisingly fulfilling in both mental and physical growth, as well as in recreations and hobbies, as Amagi, Tomo and others had encouraged him to not just focus on training and to grow as a person. This led Naruto to discovering that he had a couple of hidden talents that he didn't suspect to possess at first. The first being his talent in playing the flute, something that he enjoyed doing quite a lot, which helped him relax and get his mind off unneeded things. Over the months, ever since Tomo had made him a flute, his now most prized possession, it became a very often sight to see Naruto either at the Inari temple or somewhere in the forest, playing his flute. More often than not, he had quite a large audience consisting of the yokai of all shapes and sizes, with even a couple of Biwa Bokuboku finding their way to him, just to play alongside him. Along with playing flute, Naruto's other hobbies included playing shogi and chess with Amagi or other kitsune, spending time at the temple and learning the rites to Inari, along with other deities. But another field where Naruto found himself interested and immersed in was writing of all things.
So far, he had only written a couple of short stories and poems, with the latter probably being his weaker side, where stories were something he seemed better accustomed to making. Amagi did mention to him more than once that he had a good hand for writing and vivid imagination, along with stating that the quality of the current literature has dropped below acceptable levels, something that seemed really aggravate Kaga. When he thought back and recalled the stories and books he read before,
he had to agree with his kitsune teacher in that regard. Since Tale of a Gutsy Ninja was rather mediocre, and that was Naruto now being merciful. And as for make-out series that he found stashed in between the books on the highest shelf in his family library, along with being protected by a simple seal and an incendiary bomb. For some reason, it would be better said that when Amagi and Kaga got their hands on those books and on Naruto,
they've given him an earful of his life. Though they did calm down when he said he didn't read any of it. He didn't know why they acted this way, but something told Naruto that he best never bring up that series ever again. Either way, if Naruto's opinion of Jiraiya was not quite high before, then now it hit rock bottom, though the same thing could be said about almost all of his family and their friends, save, of course, for Mito.
While over these months he grew very close to Amagi, Tomo, Kaga, Akagi and others, starting to see them as his family. The same couldn't be said about his real family. His parents, just as he had suspected, were spending most of their time on the twins, while leaving him out for most of the time. Not that he minded all that much, at least now, but he did mind the fact that Mito was also often being left out by them, though to a significantly lesser degree. It did help the matter knowing that Mito now had, since November, a new caretaker, and it was someone whom Naruto could trust. That caretaker was none other than Kitsune Izuna, who was now working under the guise of a normal, white-haired, golden-eyed young woman. Naruto didn't know how did Amagi manage to have Mebuki ousted, but also replaced her by Izuna, but he was grateful. His parents were very trusting towards her, with his mother even having come to depend upon her in household chores, with Izuna oftentimes even making food, something that Naruto was grateful to her for. Before her, his family's menu was rather limited in varieties, with ramen being a near constant on the table at least once. While Naruto did find it to be tasty, at least in the past, but eating it for almost every day had served to create a certain distaste for that thing. Thank Inari for Izuna and her balanced food, because without her, Naruto was certain he would find himself going nuts from eating ramen every day. He didn't understand how could his family handle it, and why did Kushina always make it every day. It's like she was obsessed with it and was trying to pass on that obsession on him and his siblings. Overall, however, things weren't well between Naruto and his parents, but they didn't even realize it. Since Naruto could sense their emotions and thoughts when he was near them, in their minds and eyes, they were still as close as they've ever been, something that Naruto could attest to was a lie. And speaking of his siblings, if they were irritating to Naruto before, then now they were starting to become just plain insufferable. The fact of them being trained by their parents, along with Sanin's taking part in it, had gone into their heads. And now their pride and arrogance swelled to the point of Naruto starting to avoid them as much as possible. Their ego was practically giving him a migraine whenever he sensed their emotions. And their thoughts were so one-sidedly obvious and written all over their faces, that he didn't even need empathy to know what they think. Over the months, the two have begun to nearly openly look down on both Naruto and Mito, with both of them not wasting an opportunity to point out that Naruto wasn't like them and that they were better, although, according to Tomo, Naruto as he was right now, could beat both of them rather easily. Not that Naruto was going to test out that thought. Unlike those two firebrands, he wasn't in the market of picking fights with nearly everyone to prove their worth. Hell, leave that to the Sanin's favorites. Oh, and speaking of those two, not much has really changed for Naruto in that department, save for Naruto gaining an even lower opinion about the two of them. Since Tomo and Amagi spoke in detail about them and their self-deprecating hobbies, Tomo had quite a great deal to say about Tsunade, who through gambling and drinking excessively and without control,
had squandered over 2/3 of Senju fortunes, with the rest being preserved by Tomo personally.
Since it actually belonged to her, while Tsunade was the greatest medic in all of land. Her hubris, temper and bad habits have dulled her abilities. And Tomo did stated that Shizune Kato, Tsunade's apprentice and attendant, was quite capable of surpassing Tsunade, if only she were to step out of the oppressive woman's shadow, and less said about Jiraiya, the better, because Naruto preferred to think as little as possible about him and his thoughts and emotions were also giving him a headache. Seriously, what was his deal with seeing naked women and wanting to do what he could only guess was mating with them? Naruto had seen Akagi naked more often than not, when the kitsune wished to take a bath with him, and there wasn't much of a reaction from Naruto. Sure, she smelled very nice and she was very soft to touch, both skin and fur, but beyond that, maybe it was something that grown-ups had going for them. Deep in his musings, Naruto sat by the window, seemingly watching the skies pass by without a care in the world, when he heard a knock on his door, that brought Naruto out of his thoughts, knowing that it was Izuna, since she was the only one to knock when coming into his room. "Come in." Naruto spoke up, with the door opening, revealing Izuna in simple civilian clothing and looking like a pretty civilian woman. "Naruto, your mother wished for me to tell you that the lunch is ready," Izuna said with a small smile. "Don't worry, I've managed to convince her to leave ramen out of menu for today." "That's a relief. Thank you, Izuna, I'll be there in a minute," Naruto said, as he got up from his seat. "And also, we are having Tsunade and Jiraiya for tonight," Izuna added without much of an enthusiasm.
Naruto blinked when he heard that, but then he used his sensory abilities, finding out that they indeed were here. He must have been reminiscing a little bit too intensely, if he had managed to miss their arrival. Oh well.
"Maybe you should take an early leave, Izuna, lest Jiraiya gets into one of those fits of his," Naruto said with disdain at the man. "I think I'll be staying today at home, maybe play a few songs to Mito."
"That is very nice of you, Naruto, but I've had to deal with more than one pervert over my time, and I've learned how to effectively put them down," Izuna assured him, before leaving him. With a sigh released from his mouth, Naruto departed from his room and headed downstairs towards the table. Once he got there, he could see that everyone was already seated, with only his seat that was near the end of the table and close to Mito, was the only one empty. Food was already served and everyone already started eating without him, save for Mito patiently waiting for Naruto. When he got into the room, Tsunade was the first one to see him and addressed him, barely gulping down food before that. "You're late. What were you doing there upstairs, counting skies or sleeping?" Tsunade said with clear disdain in her voice, with anger pouring out on Naruto, while he steeled himself and his nerves. "I am sorry for being late and preventing you from eating, Lady Tsunade," Naruto said in an even tone, with Tsunade huffing. "Yeah, you better be sorry, you lazy bum. We were starving, and you didn't show up when Mom called for you," Natsu accusingly stated to Naruto. "Well, you are not starving now, are you?" Naruto asked in a rhetorical manner, riling up Natsu and Narumi, before Minato decided to put a stop this spat. Now, let's just calm down and enjoy the food your mother and Izuna made, and Naruto, please be on time and pay attention to when we call for you, okay?" Minato asked in a fatherly fashion and smiled, with Naruto sensing that his father, while oblivious, still felt some kind of disappointment in Naruto, a reason for which continued to avoid Naruto's perceptive mind. "Now that we are all here, let's eat." With that said, the lunch continued, with Naruto taking his seat and eating his food. And while the Namikaze and Jiraiya engaged in the small talk between themselves while eating. The only ones not to do so were Naruto, Mito and, surprisingly, Tsunade. While Naruto and Mito were silent due to the fact of them knowing not to talk while eating, something that Naruto, thankfully, taught his little sister early on. Tsunade was a whole different case, since she was observing Naruto intently and wasn't practically taking her eyes off the boy. She has always had conflicting feelings towards the kid since he was born and after he was mysteriously cured of what seemed to be assured death. It was still something that made Tsunade angry and bitter, since she tried every single thing that she knew on that child to save his life, but wasn't able, and then he suddenly gotten better in a near one instant. Tsunade was an atheist, much to her grandmother's dismay. And for her an explanation such as the divine intervention wasn't something she accepted as a viable explanation. After he was released, she had tried to do research on to how he could have possibly survived. Coming up with nothing, she went on to ask and practically interrogate Tomo about her time with Naruto and if she did something to him, like using some kind of secret Uchiha technique on him. Tomo stated to her multiple times that she didn't do a thing and was just as in the dark as Tsunade,
But Senju woman didn't relent and tried to press Tomo for more, but all she had gotten in the end was nothing, but her severely soured relations with Tomo. Since Tomo, apparently, didn't know anything, Tsunade decided to take a look at that priestess of foxes. Imagi, but that also yielded no results whatsoever. Imagi was someone whom Tsunade couldn't stand for being just so. That woman had that unnatural air about her. One that made people feel like life isn't as bad as it is. And it seemed like nothing fazed her. Add to that the fact of Tsunade despising religion of any kind. And it becomes somewhat obvious why Tsunade disliked Imagi. That, and also the fact of mentioning religion and yokai made Tsunade think back about Nawaki, who always seemed to believe in them and even claimed to have met them, while Tsunade didn't believe him and always told him to shut up about his fantasies. Their very last spat happened just before he took off for that mission, returning back to Tsunade as nothing more than a charred unrecognizable corpse. Ever since then, Tsunade came to hate almost all that reminded her of religion and yokai, all just to make her pain a little less loud. And yet every time she looked at Naruto, that pain returned and gripped Tsunade's soul harder than ever, along with the feeling of jealousy towards the boy, who was given the second chance at life for no good reason. Why should that kid get away from dying, while her little brother didn't? Where was justice in that? Those were the kinds of thoughts that surged in Tsunade's mind when she looked at Naruto, and every time he had tried to talk to him or her to him, she couldn't bring herself to say a nice thing to him. All she could do was react to him with anger and irritation, before starting to feel ashamed of herself, but being too prideful to admit it out loud, and so, Tsunade simply continued to observe the kid from afar and when she had the chance. Everything seemed to be going rather mundane with that kid. Until a couple of months ago Tsunade started to notice some serious changes happening with the brat. For starters, he seemed to have started to grow up a little bit faster, seemingly for no reason. Tsunade could have just written it off as something to do with his food, but he did say same things as his siblings, and they didn't grow up as much, while Naruto already was higher than both Natsu and Narumi, and even seemed a little more built than they are, as if he was training. Whatever was happening to Naruto, his parents definitely didn't have anything to do with it.
Next thing she noticed about Naruto was him hanging out at Inari Temple of all places, often spending a whole day there. Tsunade couldn't fathom for what reason would Naruto want to be in there, especially when he could be either home or playing with other kids, but she did notice that all other kids and grown-ups seemingly ignoring him or giving him wide berth. Maybe it had something to do with those rumors about the kid being abnormal or something, who knows.
Whatever the case, Naruto was a very often guest within the temple, and seemed to be on the first-name basis with Imagi and Tomo, of all people, with him talking to them like they were good friends. She didn't get any details from Katsuya, whom she had ordered to follow the kid without getting noticed, but Katsuya did say that Naruto was well liked by Imagi, and that he also seemed to play a flute, very well in fact. The kid seemed to be really full of mysteries that Tsunade would like to know about him, for some strange reason. Maybe it stemmed because he looked and reminded her of Nawaki, or maybe it was because of him cheating the fate, or simple curiosity. Whatever the reason, when Tsunade set her mind to something, she was determined to get to the bottom of it, and now seemed like a perfect time for it. So, Naruto, learn any new songs for that flute of yours? Tsunade suddenly spoken up, loud enough so as to make everyone turn their attention towards her and Naruto, when she spoke up. Huh? What are you talking about, Tsunade? What flute? Kushina asked, blinking a couple of times, thinking about what she heard. The flute that Naruto plays. Didn't you guys know? It would appear that Naruto has a talent for music, specifically with the flute, which is quite something to hear. Tsunade knew full well that none of them knew about this, and she wished to use this to provoke Naruto into giving her a couple of answers. Maybe you could play it for us sometime in the future, Tsunade suggested with seeming interest, while Naruto already could feel condescension and curiosity from her. Naruto plays really well. It's really beautiful and always so nice to hear him play for me. Mito chirped in, before turning to Naruto. Big brother, can you play for me later today? That song you called Spring. Spring's dawn, Mito, and sure, I'll play it for you whenever you want. Naruto answered with a smile and without missing the beat, sensing surprise from Tsunade and confusion, since she expected to have put him in a difficult situation. Naruto, we never knew that you've started to play flute. Where did you even learn and who gave you a flute? Minato asked out of curiosity, with Naruto sensing that he really did want to know.
More importantly, why didn't you tell us? Kushina wanted to know why her baby didn't share such an important thing with her. Did you think we would think less of you just because of that? Naruto, you are our son, and we would support you in whatever hobby you have.
Well, I started to play during the winter, when I saw one of the Komuso monks that were staying in the village play it. I really liked it. and he showed me how to play one, Naruto answered truthfully, and as for the flute itself, I got it from the friend, it is a gift. Really? Why have we never heard you play it? Do you feel embarrassed playing it before public? Minato asked, with Naruto not taking well to that question, since he was quite proud of his play before a yokai public. It's okay, son, there is nothing wrong about getting a little jittery when you are in the center of attention. I too had to deal with it when I first became a Hokage. Minato jumped to conclusion before Naruto could answer to him. I don't know about you, Dad, but I don't have a problem with crowds or attention, Naruto suddenly said to him, making Minato stop. Then why didn't we know about it before now? Kushina pressed on the question.
Well, I didn't exactly hide it or anything. Izuna knows that I like to play the flute when I am in my room, Naruto said without any trouble.
Izuna, is this true that Naruto plays the flute in his room? Kushina asked of her, as Izuna was walking down the hallway. Oh yes, Naruto does play his flute when he is in his room. Quite often in fact, Izuna confirmed with the nod, before continuing. I once asked him about it, and he said that if it was distracting me, he would stop, but it really doesn't. In fact, it's very beautiful and touching when he picks up his flute and plays it. I oftentimes just stop for a minute or two just to listen to it when I am doing chores. He has a real talent for it. I am sure anyone who hears how he plays will agree with me. Izuna smiled to Naruto, before getting back to her duties. Well, looks like we've got a future lady killer growing up here, eh? Jiraiya jokingly said, before giving Naruto his signature grin and look. You know, quite a few women find musicians really appealing and attractive. Perhaps in the future I can teach you how you can use the flute to get them all to. At that moment Kushina and Tsunade gave Jiraiya a murderous look, making him shut up. Jiraiya, stop trying to corrupt my children with your pervert antics. Kushina growled at him, before calming down and turning to Naruto. That is actually great, Naruto. I always wanted to learn how to learn some kind of musical instrument, but I never got around to do so. I especially wanted to learn flute, since it was an Uzumaki traditional instrument. Maybe you can show us how you play today. Who cares what that fool likes to play? Natsu said indignantly, with Naruto giving him a curious eye, sensing that Natsu was jealous of Naruto, due to the latter becoming center of the attention today. Any fool can learn how to play that stupid thing, even one like him. Natsu, that isn't a very nice thing to say about your brother, Minato chided him, but without much intent in his voice. You should be happy that your brother found something that he likes to do. Now we'll hopefully have a house filled with music. When Naruto plays for us, Minato smiled to him, actually feeling somewhat proud of his son, though not losing that disappointment as well. Well, if he has time to kill by playing some flute, then why doesn't he try and train to be a ninja? Narumi suddenly asked, with poisonous feeling of condescension felt by Naruto. We've already learned how to channel our chakra and how to use shuriken and kunai, and what did you learn, little brother? She asked all too sweet, with Naruto forcing himself to steel himself from answering back. Well, not everyone gets to start training to be shinobi as you do, Narumi. You and Natsu are really special, and because of that we can't let that special talent of yours go to waste, not to mention that you have Kyuubi chakra in you. You two need to train really hard if you want to become truly great shinobi, just like your parents and yours truly, the great Toad Sage of Mount Myoboku. Jiraiya declared himself proudly, making others sweat drop a little. Your little brother just isn't as special as you are, so he'll have to wait till he can start with his own training in the academy, but I am sure that Naruto will become a good shinobi in the future, Jiraiya said without consideration for Naruto's feelings, while others seemed to agree with him in that statement. You hear that, Naruto? You may still be a good shinobi in the future, if you stop being such a fool all the time and actually put in the effort when we get into the academy. Shame that you'll never be like me and Narumi, but well, looks like your precious yokai favored us over you in the end, Natsu said arrogantly. Kami, Naruto replied, making Natsu look back at him. What? Natsu asked him again. Kami, Natsu, Kami bestow favors upon people, not simple yokai. Naruto explained to him, even I know of that, and I am a fool, if you were to be believed. The tiniest smirk appeared on Naruto's lips, infuriating Natsu at the fact that his stupid little brother one-up him. I knew about it, I just wanted to check if you also knew about it, Natsu said loudly, so as to hide his embarrassment, but failing, due to his face turning red. Then thank you, wise sage, for helping this fool remember things he isn't supposed to forget, Naruto said without losing beat, further aggravating Natsu. Why you? Natsu was about to stand up, before Kushina put a stop to it. Natsu, Naruto, that is enough, both of you, no fighting at the table. Or you'll both be going to your rooms without dinner tonight. Am I understood? Just like usual, Kushina's method of threats did its deed and fighting died down, before she turned to Naruto. Naruto, it is not good manners to mock your siblings like that. Just because you seem to know something they don't gives you no right to act all high and mighty. She decided to discipline Naruto, who had to stop himself from corking up the brow at the fact that he wasn't the one who started to do so right now. Talk about selective vision and hearing. Naruto heard Kaga, his current guardian, speak from behind him in her fox form. As you say, Mom, Naruto replied, deciding to return to his food, with others deciding to follow his example, until Tsunade, unsatisfied with the information she gotten so far, decided to press on for more facts. By the way, Naruto, how is that priestess doing? She suddenly asked seemingly out of nowhere, again getting everyone's attention, with Naruto starting to feel irritated at Tsunade's constant need to bring to light his life, you know, the one that Tomo likes to hang out so much with. What was that woman's name? Tsunade seemingly forgotten, with Naruto sensing how she was almost enjoying it. Does that woman take pride in making people feel uncomfortable, or is it something to do with her obsession about you? Kaga asked with a barely contained growl. I've seen Nogitsune with more tact than this cow, and that is saying a lot. What priestess? Jiraiya asked out of curiosity. Wait, do you mean Amagi? That fox priestess with the body of a goddess and those absolutely gorgeous. Jiraiya wasn't allowed to continue, when he felt Kushina's feet nearly crush his own. She is an Inari priestess, not just a fox priestess, Naruto corrected him, but it was clear nobody cared about it. Naruto, what does that mean? How come you know Amagi of all people, and also, do you know Tomo Uchiha? Minato suddenly asked with some force in his voice, with Naruto nodding to him, surprising everyone. Yes, I've met them a long time ago, when I was out on a walk near the woods and I saw Amagi, coming out of them. Naruto bended the truth a little bit for this one. She was curious to see me so far away from home, and after we've talked a little, she offered to take me to her temple. I was really interested in it and we went there, and that's where I met Tomo. Naruto, don't you know that you can't just let some strange weird people talk to you, much less walk you to their places? Kushina was angry at Naruto, especially now that she heard about Tomo, especially with that weirdo, who worships Kyuubi of all things, and that damned woman as well. Amagi doesn't worship Kyuubi, she worships Inari, goddess of fertility, rice, nature, food and prosperity. It's a good deity. One that doesn't hurt people, in Kyuubi is a monster. Naruto reminded Kushina, with some irritation coming out from him, and Amagi isn't weird or bad, she is simply a very nice lady that welcomed me at her house and told me about herself, nothing else. Does it even matter what that woman worships? Giant fox is a giant fox, and Kyuubi is the biggest one around, so she's obviously worshipping it. Kushina angrily stated, hating when people didn't agree with her. Kurama isn't even a real kitsune, much less an incarnation of Inari. You red-headed ogress, Kaga angrily said, with her tails swinging angrily, and if you judge the divinity by the size, then I'd like to see what you have to say if you were to see Amagi ne-sama in her kitsune form, and she is only a Tenko, not Inari. Kushina, let's not get too obsessed with it, shall we? Minato decided to try and defuse the situation, and Naruto, it was very careless of you to allow Amagi to take you to her temple. You must always be careful around people that you do not know. Even if you were in Leaf Village, you could have been hurt or worse, kidnapped by our enemies, Minato said with a strict tone, his disappointment towards Naruto intensifying. Yet I wasn't hurt or kidnapped, was I? Naruto asked back, with Kushina seemingly having had enough. That's not the point, Naruto. If you can learn how to behave with the strangers, then we should let you walk alone so much and talk to those two women. From now on, I don't want you anywhere near those two. Do you hear me? Kushina demanded of him, expecting him to comply. And why should I be around them? They are good people and they haven't done a single bad thing to me, not to mention that I really like Amagi's company, and Tomo is always very interesting to talk to, Naruto asked, seeing his mother widen her eyes out shock and anger. What is so interesting in that dark sow that had murdered her own child? Kushina had suddenly asked of Naruto, with Minato seemingly shocked that she brought it up, while Naruto felt not just anger at him, but absolute hatred towards Tomo for some reason. Did she ever tell about that, That woman had killed her own son, whom she had with God knows who, and as far as I am concerned, she now tries to get to me through you, all because she's always been jealous of my happiness. That snake will do anything to hurt me, Naruto, even use a foolish child like you. Naruto widened his eyes when he heard his mother just call him like that, with Minato too shocked at that. Kushina, maybe you are taking this way too seriously, why don't you? Then why did she save us all? Naruto suddenly asked of Kushina, surprising everyone again. What are you talking about, Naruto? She asked of him. On the night when you had us, when the fox attacked. Why did she save us if she, according to you, hates us so much? Naruto asked her the difficult question of Kushina, making her unable to answer it. Naruto. Where did you hear about it? Minato asked him, since this was a rather classified information that no simple child should have access to. I heard you and Kakashi speak about it a couple of months back, when he was visiting us. Naruto didn't lie on that account. You said that if it wasn't for Tomo, then we would be dead and village would be destroyed, so why did she save us on that night? Because she is a sick woman that can't get over what she did, and who cares why she did it? Natsu asked of Naruto. The point, Naruto, is that you are an even bigger fool than we thought you were, and here I was thinking you couldn't get any dumber. If mom says you should be with her, then you should. Mom and dad are always right. But what if she is wrong? Naruto suddenly asked back, with steel in his voice. Naruto, it's not as simple as that, and yes, she did save you and your siblings on that night. But that doesn't mean that you should associate yourself with people like her and Amagi, Minato said, trying to get to his son, who felt like his father wanted to hide something. You are a son of Hokage, my son, and so you should know with just what people you should talk to and what people you should talk to, and while Amagi may be nice and Tomo can act somewhat polite, they aren't the sort of people you can just hang out with. And why is that? What's so different about them that I should talk to them? Naruto pressed on. What's different? Fool, you are Hokage's son, and who are they? Some dumb fox priestess and a psycho that can't make up her mind. They are beneath our status, obviously, Narumi said as if it was the fact, with Naruto starting to get on the wit's end of his patience. Seriously, little brother, if you start to hang out with people like them, not only will you become even more foolish, but you'll probably fail as ninja as well, and what will you be after that, So, who in your opinion I should hang out with, dearest sister? Naruto asked with a sweet tone, but fully laced with sarcasm. Gushing fans that can't say no to anything you have to say, or airheaded that only care about dolls, boys and how cool you look. Because if that's the people to be around with, if you want to become a great shinobi, then thank you, but it'll pass, Naruto said with full seriousness, shocking everyone. Brat. Did you hear yourself just now? Do you know what you've just said? Tsunade asked him and looked at him as if he was half crazy. I am not deaf, Lady Tsunade, and yes, I heard myself and I meant it, Naruto said it with more clarity. If I don't get to be a shinobi, then I'll be fine with it, there are other things to do in life. Of course a fool, and a weakling would say that, Natsu said it, with Naruto turning his angry eye towards him. At least this fool and weakling knows how to write more than his own name, unlike the almighty and all-knowing hero, whose accomplishments range from, remind me, why are you a hero again? Naruto asked in a mocking manner. That's it, you fool. I'll show you exactly why I am a hero and you were just a dumb nobody who should have died when you were little. Natsu rose from his place, with Naruto following suit, while his older brother was marching towards Naruto. Natsu. Naruto. Minato rose up from his place, glaring at both of his sons. That's enough. Both of you. Apologize to each other immediately, or I'll send both of you to your rooms this instant. PFT. Whatever, sorry. Natsu's apology came off as completely lacking sincerity. My apologies, I should have known my place, before the hero of Konoha, who so bravely holds a raging beast inside of him, saving us all. Naruto's apology might have sounded soothing and sincere, but only because he was able to hide his emotions better. At least you know your place, Natsu said with a smirk, before returning back to his seat, as did Naruto. And Naruto. I want you to promise me that you will stop seeing Tomo and Amagi. It would seem that they have a bad influence on you, if you were thinking like you do about being a shinobi, Minato told his son. I am afraid that I can't do as you ask, father, Naruto said in an official tone, shocking everyone with his attitude. Naruto, that wasn't a request, but an order. Minato is your father. Not to mention the Hokage, if he says you should see those people. Then you should Jiraiya stated with serious tone. You may not have the tailed beast or the potential of your siblings, but you are still Hokage's son, and that means you must speak to people of your class, like children from other clans and those of counselors. If you were to follow the example of your siblings, you would understand what it means to be a Hokage's son, but if you continue to associate yourself with their ilk then. Is it Hokage's duty to care and protect the village and its people? Naruto suddenly asked of Jiraiya. Naruto, don't change the subject so, Kushina tried to stop him, but failed. Answer the question. Lord Jiraiya, are as great sage of Mount Myoboku can't answer a simple question to a foolish child. Naruto dared him. Of course it is, and your father is the best Hokage that ever lived. Jiraiya stated with pride in himself and Minato. And are Amagi and Tomo part of that village? Naruto asked again, his eyes narrowing on Jiraiya. Naruto, that's enough already. Minato tried to stop him, but also failed. Are they part of the village, or are they just garbage, like you were implying? Naruto asked with more force. Yes, they are a part of the village, but that doesn't mean that you should just talk to them and, Jiraiya tried to tell him, but Naruto interrupted him. If they are part of village, and Hokage protects all of village and its people, regardless of who they are, then why should I consider them as lesser than me or other people?
Naruto asked with force, driving Jiraiya, Minato and Kushina nearly mad with his persistence. Village is one big house, and that people here are all family. That's what father always told us, and we should care about them and look after each other, so why should I stop caring about them, when they are a part of our family, same family in which I am a part of? Tell me, why I should look down on them and not care about them. Explain to this fool why.
Because they are inferior to your father and your mother, as well as your siblings, and all of us shinobi, that's why. Jiraiya stated in rage, as he rose up and looked at Naruto, rage clear in his mind, as well as his true feelings. Listen here, you dumb brat. Those two are just weird civilians, one of which worships foxes and the other had killed her child, or let it die, but whatever, the point is, this is a shinobi village, and those two are not shinobi, so they don't count as good people to hang out with. Your father is Hokage, and like his son, you should be with people like Nara, Hyuga or Yamanaka, not some vagabonds that have decided to settle down here under the protection of better and more important people than they are. They are the real people, those that truly matter in this world, not those civilians that only have use to us when we need their help. So, what you are saying, is that everyone that isn't a shinobi, should be counted as a human beings? Naruto suddenly asked, and Jiraiya gave his answer to him. Yes. Jiraiya said it out loud, sporting the victorious smirk, before realizing what he just said. Wait, I didn't. No, you did. Naruto simply said, putting down chopsticks and standing up. Thank you for the meal. Naruto simply said, and without any other words, started to move away from the table. Naruto, where do you think you are going? Kushina demanded of him to know, with him answering. Outside. To all those that aren't shinobi and whom should be counted as humans, Naruto said with a grim expression, as he began to move. Naruto, wait, this came out wrong. Please wait. And Minato tried to stop his son, but he didn't stop, until Mito finally spoke up again. Naruto, where do you go? She said in a sad tone, with Naruto stopping and turning towards her. I am going outside, to the temple. Mito, I am sorry. If we scared you like this, we were all just being stupid, Naruto said to her. Will you play? She asked him softly, with Naruto giving her a smile. Of course I will, Mito, for you. I'll play whenever you want me to, only for you. Naruto made sure that everyone heard it and understood what he meant, before turning around and leaving the house with Kaga behind him. To hear those people talk, to actually hear how they've felt about others and what Jiraiya said, now he clearly started to see how rotten and corrupted the shinobi world was. Only shinobi mattered in this world, while civilians mattered only as providers for the villages from which to draw people, resources and money for their constant wars, battles and schemes, but when it came down to protecting those same people, only if they were paying money or giving something valuable, in other times they would just abandon them to their fates. This was not the way the world should work, not the way for the people to exist. No, for Naruto this was simply impossible to accept it. All of humans were equal in his eyes, whether daimyo, shinobi or a simple priest, all of living and thinking beings were not below him. To segregate them would be to follow the path of shinobi, and Naruto wasn't going to be a shinobi. He may learn their ways, but not accept them to the heart. If a person, human, demons, gods or yokai, need help, he shall give it without looking back. If evil in whatever form there is, human, ayakashi, yokai or even gods, prospers and shinobi are helping it, he will put an end to it, either through sword or through cunning. This was to be his way, the way to peace and end of this cycle, the way of Naruto Uzumaki Minamoto. Thanks for watching.